So far, the kind of horror stories I have seen had a few things in common. The victim in most cases happens to be alone and everything happens during the day. But what if I tell you that the story I'm about to share terrified the living crap out of me in broad daylight, that too, in public. I work at Burger King. Yes, it's my full-time job. I dropped out of college and moved out because my addict parents, who fought like animals under one roof. Generally, after all that traumatic childhood, you feel nothing can shock you anymore, but let me tell you, you are wrong. So wrong. It was a busy Wednesday afternoon. The restaurant was running in full swing. Customers were getting takeaways or eating with their close ones. I have just finished serving 5 tables simultaneously.
Hey, I'm going for a smoke. Okay, I got you, Rosie.
I went to the back of the restaurant. I was standing beside the dumpster smoking and observing cars drive by and people walking on the street when I suddenly noticed our manager sitting on the opposite sidewalk and moving back and forth in a crazy way. I zoomed in with my back camera just when she looked at me. Her eyes were closed and she had a smile on her face.
Whoa, that's creepy.
She then got up and started crossing the road with her eyes closed. Her smile got bigger every time she made it past a horrible runover. I couldn't watch it anymore. I ran inside to talk to our employees about this, just when she started banging the restaurant door like a maniac.
I'll break you! I'll finish you! You can't escape me!
The entire place broke into chaos as we all watched our manager damaging her own property with violent rage. She looked furious and mentally unstable from the way she behaved. The kids started crying out of panic. Everyone was so shocked to see a random stranger behave like that they forgot to do anything. Suddenly, one man standing close to the door tried to calm the woman down. Miss, what are you doing? Please tell me what is your problem?
I don't want to hear anything!
She just kept screaming and banging on the door. The door was already broken and hung to its last few breaths when the man tried to stop her and the woman slapped him out of the blue.
Don't interrupt me!
Hey! What the hell do you think you're doing? One of our employees charged her. Immediately, a few others went along.
Donna, what are you? Stay away from me!
The man who just got slapped lost his head and pushed the Donna away. Realizing the man is stronger than her, she calmed down. But instead of leaving, she walked right in. And boy, the way she entered. She gestured her hand in the air and started making a whooshing sound from her mouth.
Whoosh, 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 whoosh.
She constantly did this and pushed some invisible energy towards the man like she was trying some mind control trick on him.
Oh my god! We need to call the cops. This woman is crazy. She's trying some black magic thingy. Freak. I'll call the owner now.
My fellow employee Riley rushed to the other corner and I dialed 911. Once she got in, she started bizarrely moving her hands, like she was casting a spell on everyone inside the restaurant. This made all the customers scream and back off from her.
Where is she? Where is she?
She jumped on the counter and started stomping on it with her feet.
The itsy bitsy spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain. And the itsy bitsy spider climbed up the spout again.
Her eyes popped out like evil. The way Donna screamed, spitting all over us, was a sight I'll never forget. And suddenly, she jumped on the other side of the counter, running straight to the kitchen. Our chefs moved away from her path in fear, and she walked straight to Riley, who was sitting at a table talking to the owner. Before we all knew it, she jumped on her and grabbed her shirt. Then she took her face extremely close to her and started growling at her like a wild animal. Riley began screaming, but Donna didn't let her go. Instead, she started shaking her violently and screaming at her like a possessed woman. She started slapping and punching her. Riley's shout for help made 2 men rush to the woman. It was impossible to separate her. The men even couldn't do it.
I am going to crush you like a spider, you filthy woman!
Donna ripped Riley's clothes, giving her trauma for a lifetime. Now, I couldn't watch it anymore. I dropped my phone and jumped on them. Seeing my step up, all the women employees came to Riley's rescue. We understood that men are not going to be able to raise their hands at her, so if anything needs to be done now, must come from the girl gang. As we all jumped on Donna and grabbed her, she slowly let go of Riley, but kept throwing punches and kicks. She even spat at us, but we didn't let her go. Now that she was trapped, she stopped pushing it.
Don't touch me! Don't! Leave me, okay?
We let her go, but guarded her so she couldn't harm anyone anymore. When the cops came and arrested her, she started crying.
Please, let me go home. I haven't slept for a long time. My mind is going crazy. I can hear the voices in my head 24/7. They just won't stop talking, please.
The restaurant got taken over by her relative and she never came back. All we got to know from workplace gossip is that her husband cheated on her with some woman, and it made Donna go crazy. I'm still working here, and I hope I get to see Donna again, but as a happy, peaceful person. Donna, if you're watching this,
I hope you're getting the help you need. Take care.
the story you just saw is based on this true footage shot at a Burger King outlet. The day was going like usual when suddenly the manager of the outlet snapped out and started behaving like crazy. She began damaging the restaurant in complete rage, and when a customer tried to stop her, she slapped him. The manager then moved on with her vile insults and weird behavior, and even attacked a Burger King employee. Her insanity carried on until the cops showed up and calmed her down. The reason of such outbursts is still unknown, but it terrifies to witness how a perfectly normal human being turned into a deranged madwoman that no one saw coming.
To anyone out there, it's never a good idea to walk alone at night, and it's never a good idea to accept a stranger's offer of a walk. I know this now, but 2 years ago, as I strolled through the park, I didn't think that anything could go wrong. I was enjoying the tranquility of the park when suddenly, I saw something ahead of me in the shadows. At first, I thought it might be nothing more than a stray animal, but as I drew closer, I began to make out what appeared to be a man. I grew nervous, chills running down my spine. Something about the way he was walking made me uncomfortable, but suddenly, he walked under a lamppost and a grin spread across my face. I knew this man. He was the father of one of my good friends, Lucy, and we'd all spent many afternoons in the park together. I put my previous fear aside and began to walk toward him again, my fear replaced with relief.
Hey, Mr. Castro. It's me, Clarissa.
Clarissa, it's been so long since we've seen each other. How you been? How are your parents?
His polite inquiries were comforting and my fears from before began to subside. We continued to walk together, engaging in pleasant conversation and reminiscing on our past family adventures. I relaxed as we continued to walk, enjoying the late night air. Despite this, the conversation soon took a turn for the worse and began to make me feel uncomfortable.
So Clarissa, are you seeing anyone special yet? You know, I'm always willing to give advice.
He licked his lips and leered at me.
Thanks, but I'll pass.
Well, it's your loss. Come, let me show you something.
The implication cleared. I had forgotten my previous fear as I hesitantly followed him down a dark alley, his grip on my arm tightening as he led me forward. We eventually came to a stop and I looked around in confusion, not sure why we were there. Suddenly, his hands were on my shoulders, pushing me up against the wall. His lips were on my neck and I instinctively recoiled, screaming for help.
Help! Somebody! Please help me!
Shut up! It's too late! Nobody is out right now! Stop struggling or I'll hurt you!
He began to tie me up, and I knew that if I didn't get free soon, this would be the end for me. With a burst of strength, I managed to break free and ran towards the park as fast as I could. I could hear him cursing behind me. I hid in a bush, my heart pounding as I tried to remain silent. I could hear him storming around, his footsteps thudding as he ran.
Clarissa, come back! I just want to talk!
He began rummaging through the bushes directly next to the public bathroom in the park. I whimpered, trying my best to stay hidden. All he had to do was look through the bushes I was hiding in, and I was finished. I stayed hidden though. He was right next to me and I clamped my hands over my mouth, trying my best not to move. I could see him from my hiding place in the bush. His wild and scraggly hair hung limply from his balding head, his weird eyes greenish in the moonlight. The black dots in the center of his eyes darted to and fro, trying to find me. His hulking form stood looming over the park, like an omen of death. He walked off, but I could still hear him shouting out my name and calling for me to come out.
Clarissa! Clarissa!
Finally, it grew quiet and I knew he had gone for now. I crawled out from my hiding place and ran to my car, quickly getting inside and driving home. When I arrived at my house, however, I saw something that made me sick. Out front in my yard, a hulking figure stood, his eyes wild as he stared into my windows. The hair was unmistakable, and I knew in an instant that it was Castro. I cursed myself now for inviting him and his daughter over to my house before. He knew where I lived, backing my car into an alleyway before he could see me. I quickly dialed the police.
Hello? Yes, please send help. There's a man outside my house that I'm afraid of. He's been following me and trying to abduct me.
I gave them the address and they promised to be there soon. Looking out of my window, I saw Castro beginning to walk away from my house, his form becoming more and more mysterious in the night. I waited patiently for the police, praying that he wouldn't get away before they got here. When they arrived, we looked around the area, but he had vanished as if into thin air. After searching for his car, however, they found something that made my stomach churn. Inside the trunk, the police found women's clothing and bags full of trinkets. The police quickly got a search warrant and searched his house. It was in the news a few days later. Several young women had been held captive in his house for years. I couldn't believe I had nearly fallen victim to a serial abductor. I shivered at the thought of how close I had become to being one of those poor girls, never seeing the light of day again. I've learned my lesson. Anyone who thinks that these abductions don't happen is foolish. You need to be aware of your surroundings, and you need to be careful of who you trust. That's something I will never forget. Even if you think you know someone, be cautious. It could save your life.
The story you just saw is based on the true, terrifying story of Ariel Castro. Ariel Castro was a serial killer who kidnapped 3 girls between 2002 and 2004. These 3 girls were held hostage in his house until 2013 when they escaped. During this time, one of the women had a daughter. Castro kidnapped these women by inviting them for drives and then kidnapping them. After being caught, Castro was sent to 1,000 years in prison without the possibility of parole.
What is the strangest thing that has happened to you in a McDonald's? Surely everyone will tell you that they found a bug in their food, or that they saw a fight. But what I experienced was much, much worse. This happened to me while I was cleaning the McDonald's parking lot. It was a normal day, and as usual, the only thing on my mind was thinking about going home as soon as possible. While I was lost in thought, I began to hear footsteps approaching me. It didn't sound like the footsteps of a customer or a friend leaving with their food. They were the halting and furtive footsteps of someone stalking me. Those footsteps were coming from behind me, and they stopped the moment I turned around. I could vaguely make out someone hiding in the shadows. Did they want to rob me?
Who's there?
I plucked up my courage, grabbed the cleaning supplies, and decided to run to the front door. Suddenly, a silhouette interrupted me and stood in my way. It was a woman I knew. Her name was Sandra. She was a well-known girl in the area, but for all the wrong reasons. Sometimes she could be a very sweet girl, and even though we knew she worked the streets, she was very nice to everyone and never got in trouble. Other times, it was different. She would insult us and could behave very erratically. Some classmates told us stories of times that she had threatened them or tried to hit them, but those were only rumors. That day, she was stranger than usual. She was in her underwear, and even though she had known me for months, she tried to sexually proposition me, which I refused. That's when the chaos started. Furious, she pulled out a knife and pointed it at me.
Who the hell do you think you are to reject me? Do you think you're better than me? Do you think I'm worthless?
No, Sandra, I'm working. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disrespect you.
Ah!
What's wrong? Are you all right?
Where am I? What's going on?
Sandra, you were...
Interrupting me, she lunged at me and threw me to the ground. She raised her knife with her eyes closed and brought it violently down towards my body. But to my surprise, she missed. The knife had embedded itself in the ground by the side of my head. Without touching a hair on my head, she raised her knife and drove it into the floor, again and again. For her last attack, Sandra opened her eyes and tried to stick it into me, but I stopped her, and by squeezing her wrist with enormous force, I managed to get her to let go. When I saw her face a second later, I realized that I hadn't outmatched her strength. She had simply zoned out. She had a blank stare and drool was dripping from her mouth. It looked as if she had rebooted. From one second to the next, her eyes seemed to zone in and out of focus. When they returned to normal, she acted like I wasn't even there, and then she ran into the McDonald's. Without wasting any time, I stood up and followed her at full speed.
Hey, how are you?
Sandra, you can't come in like that. Put on a shirt.
What did you just say?
Oh no, be careful.
Before my co-worker Greg could react, Sandra desperately ran up to him and tried to hit him, but he dodged her and fell to the floor. Before he could get up, Sandra displayed brutal force and lifted the huge cash register to throw it at his prone figure. Her eyes were red and she was foaming at the mouth. It was terrifying. She was behaving as if she had turned into a monster. I ran towards her and managed to push her away just as she threw the cash register, which smashed to the floor, narrowly missing Greg. Even more frustrated with not being able to kill him, she started banging on all the tables with a terrifying war cry. The few customers that were still left at this time of night began to run as she lifted up the chairs and threw them against the glass. It worked out because there were no more people in danger of the projectiles. We were now alone with her.
Sandra, calm down.
Please, help me.
Of course, we all want to help you. Calm down. Let go of that needle. Needle? What do you mean?
In answer to my question, my coworker saw Sandra's hand and, although it was very small, I could see a needle left in her hand.
Oh no.
Why do you want to help me? Nobody can help me. I don't need your help.
Watch out! Her face changed again!
With the needle in hand, Sandra rushed at me again, this time more determined than ever. She attacked me with the syringe and I managed to lock her hand. We both struggled to force the needle the other way.
Damn it, help me! I'm sorry. Security should take care of this. I'll go call them. No! Come help me! You coward!
While I was distracted, the woman kicked me in the stomach and I fell backward. She was about to pounce on me again, and this time I couldn't do anything to stop her. But to my luck, the strangest thing happened. As if someone had flipped a switch, Sandra decided not to attack me anymore and instead ran over to the ice cream machine to feed herself.
What?
Ice cream!
I ran in her direction and managed to get the syringe off her. She didn't even put up any resistance. She just kept devouring ice cream. A few seconds later, Greg and the security guard showed up and detained her until the police arrived a little while later and took her away. Soon after, we found out that Sandra hadn't been under the influence of any drugs, although she told everyone that she struggled with multiple personality disorder. She had absolutely no memory of what had happened to her, and when she saw the security video, she cried uncontrollably. Today she is off of the streets and is receiving help in a recovery center. As for my co-worker and the security guard, they were kicked out shortly after. The cameras captured how Greg almost left me to die, and the security guard had been sleeping in an office throughout the ordeal. As for me, I still work at McDonald's, but never again will I agree to work the night shift.
These are the actual mugshots of Sandra Suarez, who entered a McDonald's on approximately March 24th, 2014, wearing only underwear. After destroying the premises, security restrained her while she was eating ice cream. Sandra had no recollection of what happened, and attributes it to her having multiple personality disorder.
I've been managing my uncle's gas station for a while now. I started as a part-time worker. After school, I worked there to save up money before moving out. I didn't have many friends because of my workaholic schedule, but one thing even I knew was that it was best to stay away from the Prickly sisters. Gina and Betty Prickly were siblings and came from a lot of money. All those girls cared about was clicking their pictures and posting them on Instagram. They always wore tight clothes and had lots and lots of makeup caked on their faces. When they walked side by side on their high heels, they made boys' heads turn. One night, I was working in the gas station stocking the shelves when I heard a squeaky voice nearly in my ear.
Hi, Robbie!
Ah! Jeez!
Silly.
I turned around and it was the Prickly sisters. I could never remember which one was Gina and which was Betty, so I addressed them as,
Hi, guys. You need anything?
They both were staring weirdly at me. They had large wads of bubble gum in their mouths and they kept chewing like freaks.
Hello?
You should be glad that we came to your crappy shop, Robbie. Do you even know how many followers we have?
Here it comes. This is why people avoid them. I couldn't care less, so I got a little rude.
Look, man, if you want something, help yourself, or don't waste my time.
What did you just say? We are wasting your time? What the hell are you even worth? You useless piece of...
Look, if you're not leaving, I'm calling the cops!
They stopped screaming and then suddenly did something strange. Dumb witches started clicking selfies with me. I was bombarded by clicks and their stupid poses. Their shiny fingernails kept clicking while they both squeezed me between them. Before leaving, they both looked at me one last time and grinned. The next day when I got to school, everyone was laughing at me. Suddenly, I was tagged in my Instagram. Once I opened it, my jaw dropped. The Prickly sisters tagged me in a selfie from my gas station last night. They had morphed my image into a woman and the tagline read, "It's time to come out of your closet, Robbie." What the hell? They were spreading rumors about me, trying to portray me as someone I'm not. I stormed into class and saw them giggling amongst themselves looking at their phone.
Hey, you! What the hell was all that?
What are you talking about, Robbie? We just wanted to help you. Don't be afraid of what people say. Yeah, I mean, now it makes sense why you never flirted with us. The two hottest bombshells. Come out of your closet now.
They taunted me and humiliated me in front of everyone. My brain couldn't take it anymore. I clenched both of their hair in anger.
You freak! This is...
But as I pulled, I realized they were wearing wigs. Their hairless skulls saw the light of day in front of the entire school. Their prank backfired.
Ah! You piece of... Give us our hair back!
The sisters snatched their wigs from my hands and ran screaming. Everyone was laughing at them, and even though I felt bad, I told myself they had it coming. For the next 3 days, the Prickly sisters were nowhere to be seen. I thought the embarrassment from school had straightened them up, but God, I was so wrong. I went home after work one night when it started raining heavily. I wasn't carrying my umbrella, so I chose the shortcut home. The path went through the woods and coupled with rain, the area was pretty sketchy at that hour. Suddenly, I heard splashes behind me. I turned around, aiming the flashlight of my phone, and there they were. The prickly sisters, standing behind me in the rain. They looked horrible. All the makeup was smeared on their faces as it endured the rain. How long had they been following me? They weren't wearing their wigs, which made them look even more bewildering.
Going home, Robbie?
Yeah.
I felt my voice break a little. The sisters started slowly approaching me. I too began backing up.
Look, what happened between us, can we just forget about that?
You want to forget everything, Robbie? Wouldn't that be nice for you, huh? Because you don't have followers to be bothered about. Do you know that the students clicked our wigless pictures that day? And now our followers are leaving us because you made us look ugly!
Hatred and anger were dripping from their eyes.
We won't let you forget, Robbie! We won't! Ah!
They screamed and started running at me. I too was startled and rushed to the opposite direction. I couldn't see where I was going in the rain, but all I wanted to do was to leave them behind. After running for 20 minutes straight, I reached home. I bumped into the door, not being able to control my body. The next day, I didn't go to school or the gas station thinking they would again torment me. But that night, when I turned on the news, I saw something horrible. There had been a report of a car smashing into our store. The footage the cops shared showed a big black van coming directly towards the gas station at full speed, hitting a passing car and then smashing into the store. 2 girls got out of the car immediately after the crash, and they were none other than Gina and Betty. Both were overly dressed and unharmed by the accident. They barely seemed to care about what they had done, and no remorse could be seen in their body language. They just walked away, leaving the scene of the accident. This was the last time I saw those nut jobs. My uncle received insurance for the damage, but the cops couldn't locate the girls. People in my family think the girls in the footage weren't the prickly sisters, but I'm sure they did it to take their revenge. So Gina and Betty, if you two are watching this,
I know it was you 2 witches who crashed into my uncle's gas station that night. I hope you burn in hell.
The above story is based on the footage collected from a gas station in Los Angeles. In the security camera footage, a car can be seen approaching the gas station at a very high speed. It slams into a minivan and skids, crashing into the gas station. Moments later, 2 women come out of the car and try to restart it. When they couldn't restart the car, they simply walk away, leaving the damaged vehicle behind. The incident and the video footage seem very bizarre, as the women appear less bothered by the damage they had caused. There have been no reports on this accident, and those 2 women were never caught as well. Hey guys, my name is Owen. Although I was born and lived my whole life in the United States, my parents are from Senegal. To tell you the truth, I'm proud of my roots, but you have no idea how that affects my life, especially because of my skin color. But what I'm about to tell you is a separate point. That was the day I met the wrong person in the wrong place. He may be a human, but through my eyes, he's a monster. A monster as despicable and hideous as any horror movie you've ever seen.
It all started on a normal day. It was a Friday night, and I had just left work to go see my girlfriend in the hospital. The building was not in the best condition, and to make matters worse, my girlfriend was on a floor with very few people. The only person around was an old woman and a strange man, and that's when it all started. That strange man kept looking at me. He was sitting next to a room, but when a nurse came in to change the sheets, I could see that the room was empty. The strangest thing is that this person did not hide the fact that he was looking at me. Many times I get hateful looks because of my skin color, but this was different. The man felt me, he even greeted me. When I left my girlfriend's room, I noticed that the man was still sitting in the same position, but when he saw me leaving, he stood up and started to follow me. I got some distance from him and took out my cell phone to make sure he was following me, and at that moment I confirmed my suspicion. The terrifying man stood behind me, staring at me. He didn't walk. He didn't say anything. He didn't threaten me. He just looked at me. When he realized I was filming him, he started walking quickly in my direction. I tried to move away as fast as I could, but when I realized, he was running with his tetric and horrifying smile. I rushed to the elevator and pushed it as fast as I could. As the elevator doors tried to close, the man stopped running and just looked in the direction of my girlfriend's room and back at me, waving. How had I not noticed? My girlfriend is still there. Once the elevator arrived, I went back to the 7th floor and ran to her room. The old lady was still there, which calmed me down a bit, especially since there was no sign of the psycho. Maybe she came downstairs to find me on the 1st floor. I went into my girlfriend's room and she was sleeping. I didn't want to disturb her, so I went back out. Once I left the room, I felt a needle in my arm, and suddenly everything started to look strange. I could make out the man next to me, who had a syringe. I fell to the floor dizzy, and the man began to drag me into a room. I noticed that I was not fainting. I just felt very weak, and my body was not responding to me. My vision balanced and the man greeted me again, but when he opened his mouth to tell me something, I noticed something. He had no tongue.
Don't blame him. You wouldn't be very sane either if you'd had a lobotomy.
That voice. Next to the man, another silhouette became more prominent. It was the old woman. The woman had taken off her chin strap and glasses. She was absolutely scary, even worse than the stalker.
Don't try to talk, kid. It will be impossible. Bobo injected you with Grandma's prescription. What a perfect body you have. This is superiority. I envy your skin, your body, and your genes. How can you mistreat them like that?
Crazy racist.
What are you saying? Me? Racist? You should be grateful. Can't you see how I'm envying you? I'm trapped in this rotting old shell, but you... Soon, I will have all this.
As if these words were in order, the stalker pulled out a small knife and slowly approached my face, brushing the edge of the knife across it. What do you want to do?
Oh, isn't it obvious?
The knife came closer and closer to my face. This man was about to skin me, and there was nothing I could do. I was very weak, but I had to try and defend myself. Before I could get my strength up and try to attack the man, the doors of the room opened and we all turned around. A figure attacked the lady with a crutch. It was my girlfriend.
Leave my boyfriend alone, you crazy witch!
The old lady had fallen, but the man was still in front of her.
Do you think I didn't see you following my boyfriend? Do you think I didn't hear the old woman tell you to take him away? I won't let you do anything to him!
My girlfriend attacked the psycho, but he didn't feel a thing. He just smiled at her. I'll be fine! Run away! Limping, my girlfriend tried to escape as best she could, but the psycho began to follow her. I threw myself at her feet and held them, but with a kick, he kicked me away and walked closer toward her. My girlfriend ran away limping as best she could, but the psycho was getting closer and closer to her. I was crawling behind them down the same hallway where I had gotten on the elevator before, but this time the elevator wasn't there. There was no way my girlfriend could escape. Just as the man was about to catch her, the elevator doors opened, and out came 3 men dressed as security, who quickly grabbed the psycho while my girlfriend breathed a sigh of relief. I thought it was all over, but suddenly the old lady lunged at me with the knife. This time, she didn't want to rip my skin off. She just wanted to kill me. I had a little more energy and I was able to match her strength. That was the only thing that saved my life, since his knife was going straight for my neck. I was still very weak, and the lady's strength was starting to get the better of me, but I held on long enough for another of the security men to pull the knife out of her. A short time later, safe and sound, the security guards told us how the hallway had cameras, and even though they missed me due to inattention, they were able to see my girlfriend open the door to attack the old lady, and arrived in time before everything got even more complicated. Over time, I learned that my attackers were dedicated to kidnapping black men and extracting their skin and organs. As they said, they were superior. I still remember this lady and how I could not understand in court how her thinking was racist and psychotic, and that she is only one person among millions who, to a lesser extent, act in a similar way. The only thing that leaves me with some peace of mind is that, at least this time, these people will be locked up for good. This time, justice was done.
On February 19th, 2018, Chris Simpson was returning from visiting his girlfriend in the hospital when he had noticed a man following him. In this real footage, we will see how, even for a brief moment, Chris manages to expose him. I'm not gonna lie, when I agreed to work at Popeyes Fried Chicken, I was aware of what I was getting into. I know the place doesn't have the best reputation, but I needed a job. Besides, no job is perfect. But if I had known that what I was going to experience at that place, I would have kept looking for a job. Let me give you a little context first. It all started when overnight a man started coming in every night before the place closed. His appearance was horrendous. He looked like a homeless man. The man always did the same thing. He would arrive, order a chicken sandwich, and go to the bathroom to eat it. Although he was polite and seemed totally harmless, we were all afraid to say anything to him. He was constantly scratching himself, talking at the table with people who weren't there. His huge eye was shaking almost as much as his body. He didn't seem like a bad person, but we were all afraid that if we said anything to him, the man would explode in anger and attack us. The day it all happened, the usual routine had happened. The homeless man had ordered his chicken sandwich and was waiting for it to be delivered. We all avoided going to the bathroom when this happened. But that day, I couldn't help it. I was sick to my stomach and I couldn't wait another second for that man to go into the bathroom, eat his food, and come out. I locked myself in the farthest bathroom cubicle. I tried to hurry as fast as I could, but before I could get up, the bathroom door opened, and the man came in. He began to inspect the bathroom, choosing where to go in to eat. He tried to enter my door, but noticed that it was closed. After that, there was an awkward silence. What was he doing? Sir, what are you doing? The stall's occupied.
Oh, I'm sorry, young man. I wanted to see why this cubicle wasn't available.
Without any answer from me, the man went to the first cubicle where he always used to go. From mine, I could hear him savagely eating the chicken sandwich. The noises made me very nervous. He was devouring it without contemplation, and he didn't drink anything even for a second after eating. I took advantage of the situation to pull up my pants and leave the cubicle quickly, but as soon as the man heard my door open, he stopped eating. I walked slowly to leave. I didn't want to make him leave his cubicle. I didn't want to meet him face to face. I couldn't shake this strange feeling that something was wrong, that this man was dangerous and might possibly do something to me. When I reached the door, it opened violently and the homeless man came out. The man was in his underwear. He had taken off all his clothes when he entered the stall. He had a piece of trash which he threw out as soon as he opened the door. As soon as he came out, he made his intentions clear. He looked me straight in the eye. We both stared at each other uncomfortably without saying anything, watching each other. He wasn't looking at me in a threatening way. He didn't seem to want to hurt me, but something in his eyes was wrong. His look was desperate, hurt, and even sad, but that didn't make him any less dangerous. After all, he has 2 heads above me.
Sir, I'm sorry to bother you, but I think I need your help.
What are you doing without clothes? You know you can't eat in here, right?
Yes, I'm really sorry. But you see, I need to. It's the only way I can take off my clothes.
And why do you want to take off your clothes?
Well, this is the only way I can scratch myself while I eat and get all these damn cockroaches out of my body.
But there's nothing on your skin.
Are you blind too? Can't you see me? Don't you see all these cockroaches all over my body? If I take them off, they just come back. They just keep going on and on, eating all my skin. They're gonna eat me alive.
It's okay, sir. I apologize. I can see them better now. I'm without my glasses. I'll go get help, okay? I'll come soon with someone who will get all the cockroaches off.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir, what are you doing?
Wait. I need your help.
I was just going to look for...
No! I need you now! It is so much! It is so much! I need you to scratch me! I need you to scratch me a lot!
Sir, please let go! Help! Someone help me!
Please scratch me! Otherwise the cockroaches won't go away! Itchy, itchy, itchy!
The situation was interrupted when the two security guards entered the restroom along with some other guys, pushing the two of us out of the door. When we fell, I got up as quickly as I could, but the man was still on the floor, rolling around as if he was on fire.
Itchy, scratchy! Itchy, 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 itchy!
The police soon arrived and took the man away. I didn't report him or press any charges against him as he really didn't have any bad intentions towards me. Shortly afterward, I found out that the man was locked up in a psychiatric hospital as he had schizophrenia. I was told that just as he said, the man thought his body was full of hungry cockroaches that were brutally biting him all the time. After that, we never saw him again. But when I see a cockroach, I think of him, how it would feel to be in his skin, and how, in his desperation, he could have done something to me if I wasn't saved. This story was inspired by a serial killer named Randall Saito, who was a psychiatric patient at State Hospital. In July of 1979, he killed a 29-year-old random woman named Sandra Yamashiro at Ala Moana Center. Her body, stabbed and shot, was found in her car. 2 years later, Randall was acquitted by reason of insanity. Saito escaped State Hospital in 2017 by taking a cab using a fake ID and later was arrested in California.
My ex-girlfriend always called me a cheapskate, but I never thought such a thing could almost get me killed. It all started when I got this new apartment downtown. The place was great. I fell in love with it the moment I saw it. But the problem was that after I made the down payment, I didn't really have much for anything else. The house came with a few pieces of furniture, but it still needed some important things like a bed, a couch, a television, you know. So, I decided to ask my buddy Matt for some help. He was more than happy to oblige, but he didn't have any money either. He told me how his dad bought a pickup truck from some random guy on Craigslist. From what he said, the truck came at a steal price and was still in pretty decent shape when it arrived. I had never really bought anything off Craigslist, but it was worth a shot. Later that day, I signed up. I typed the keyword home appliances into the search menu and then pressed the search button. I got an instant hit. Some dude was practically selling an entire house worth of appliances and furniture, and they were all at a discounted price of $5 each. It was too good to be true, but I just couldn't resist. I chatted him up. He said his name was Brandon, and he was looking to sell immediately because he was moving out of town soon. I was still very skeptical, but my doubts were cleared when he FaceTimed me so that he could show me the furniture. They actually looked to be in pretty good condition, and with that, I was sold. All that was left was figuring out how to get the stuff over to my place. I really didn't have the extra cash for a delivery service, so I had to think of a more cost-efficient alternative. Then it hit me. The truck Matt told me about, it would have been perfect. I called Matt and asked him if we could use his dad's truck.
Yeah, sure, bro.
He responded in his signature enthusiastic tone. He was really a chill guy. Matt suggested that we meet with the seller somewhere open. In his words, there are a lot of crazies out there. In retrospect, he did have a valid point. I spoke to the seller about the arrangement, and he was cool with it. We decided to meet in the parking lot of a Walmart by 2 p.m. There would be a ton of eyewitnesses and ample room to make a quick getaway if the need arose. Matt and I got there 5 minutes late. I called the seller immediately, but he didn't pick up. After we waited for about 30 minutes, I decided to call again. Before the first ring could finish, The call abruptly ended. Seconds later, a text dropped to my phone.
Hello there, my friend. Are you there now? Yeah, been here for a while. Where are you?
There was a long pause.
I'm close. Where are you parked? Can you describe your vehicle to me?
I didn't think too much about the question. I honestly thought he was just trying to find us or something.
It's a gray pickup truck. We're in the parking lot. Okay.
There was another long pause. Something definitely didn't feel right at that point. His text dropped again.
My car broke down a few meters away from you, but don't worry. I've already asked my brother to come get you. He'll be there soon.
The last text was a red flag. I should have spotted immediately, but I guess I was too naive. We waited for another 25 minutes. I tried to call again, but his phone was turned off. At that point, Matt and I had already exhausted our patience. We were tired and ready to head back home. Just as Matt was about to drive off, a man suddenly jumped in front of the car. Matt abruptly hit the brakes. The car jerked forward.
Hey, you got a death wish or something?
The man looked tattered, his hair unkempt, and his overalls were dirty. There was even a mustard stain splattered on his white shirt. His eyes looked like he had been smoking a ton of weed. The man approached Matt's side of the car.
I'm sorry. Brandon sent me to come and get you.
The man stuttered, but he was all smiles. His breath reeked of dark rum. I could smell it from a mile away, but aside from his breath, something felt fundamentally off about him. Matt turned to me. We both knew something wasn't right, but we weren't sticking around to find out.
Just tell Brandon we'll come back tomorrow, okay? Something urgent came up.
I said, just to dismiss him. In a split second, the man looked infuriated. Before we knew what was happening, he conspicuously pulled out a gun and leaned toward the car. He probably didn't want to draw attention to himself. Matt and I just froze. He slipped into the back seat and just mouthed one instruction.
Drive.
We were forced to obey. We had no idea where we were going, but with the gun pointed at our heads, it didn't really matter. As we drove, a text dropped on the man's phone. He was distracted. He began to reply. Matt slowly turned toward me and gave me a knowing look. I read it loud and clear. I calmly fastened my seatbelt and braced for impact. Abruptly, Matt stepped on the brakes hard. The man was catapulted forward, and his face smashed into the dashboard. He was knocked out instantly. I quickly pried the gun out of his hands. It was a long shot, but we were glad it worked. While we were still trying to catch our breath, we heard a beep. A text dropped on his phone. To our shock, it was Brandon's profile and number. The man had just informed Brandon that he had us in custody. Brandon responded by sending him a location. Matt and I immediately contacted the police. The police department hurriedly dispatched a SWAT team to the location. It was a warehouse. But what was truly disturbing was the manner of horrors going on behind its walls. The police uncovered a syndicate of organ harvesters and human traffickers. They had basically set up shop there. We thought Brandon was the kingpin, but he turned out to just be another unfortunate victim. The police found his body gutted and buried in a shallow grave. The despicable individuals were arraigned in court and indicted. Matt and I drove home that evening, wondering what could have been our fates if things had turned out differently. We deleted our Craigslist accounts and never spoke of the incident again. There are truly a lot of crazies out there. Most of you probably ate at Burger King, but did any of you work there? My name is Alan, and I guess you could say I survived working there. It all started when my twin brother and I went in for an interview. We were about to enter the store, but from the glass entrance, a silhouette was watching us closely. It was a strange being. It looked like a statue, but we could see how it moved. I couldn't see the details, but I could see its dark red eyes looking directly at us. Was it a prop? As soon as we entered the store, I quickly looked in the direction of where we were being watched, but there was nothing there. After that, we went for the interview, and luckily, we both got the job. When we started working there, we always did the same task, Surely being twins, they thought we would understand each other better, and they weren't wrong. But neither of us was ready for what was going to happen to us. On the first day, we were sent to clean the warehouse, and strange things soon happened. The place was usually dark and cold. The lights were on, but we still couldn't see the end of the room. It was huge, bigger than the rest of the Burger King. We walked straight ahead, and at the back, something was waiting for us. The same silhouette that was watching us from the window in our interview was now standing in the distance, walking towards us. Its deformed black face was terrifying. It was something from another world. It looked like a demon that had come up from hell itself to get us. Suddenly, all the files were around us and many papers went everywhere. The distraction made me lose sight of the demon. It was no longer there.
Alan, are you okay? What happened? You lost consciousness for a second. You fainted and screamed. Luckily, no one heard you. What happened? Nothing. I'm sorry. I must be stressed because it's the first day.
I know my excuse was lame, but for some reason, my brother didn't ask me any more questions and we continued working. When I got home, everything got worse. Maybe I was going crazy, but I felt like something had followed us. Everywhere I went felt cold. I felt watched, and worst of all, I couldn't talk about it with my brother because something was wrong with him. I felt that he was the one who was watching me. One night, I opened my eyes at 4 a.m., and something woke me up. I started to inspect my house, and that's when I saw him. My brother was standing in front of the TV. There was only interference on it, but he was looking at it as if something was going on.
Yes. Okay.
Had my brother gone crazy? At that moment, I realized something else. My brother wasn't standing on anything. He was floating. Suddenly, he turned toward my position, and without walking, he floated quickly in my direction. I ran as fast as I could and locked myself in my room. He was banging his head on my door. This went on for about an hour until it simply stopped. During the morning, I opened the door in terror, and behind it, my brother was still standing there, looking at me indifferently.
Hey, Alan.
And out of nowhere, he was gone. That's when I realized it wasn't the Burger King that was possessed. It was my brother. The next day, we both went to work. He pretended nothing had happened, so I pretended nothing had happened. Our boss called to ask how we were adjusting. We both walked to his office, but on the way there, my brother spoke to me.
Hey, Alan. What?
Don't talk about me!
We walked into the boss's office. He didn't ask us any weird questions. He asked me how we liked working in the kitchen, if we were comfortable at the Burger King, and a few other questions. Before we left, I dared to ask him a question, disobeying my brother.
Hey, boss. Do you mind if my brother and I work separately? We always have to do the same task. Excuse me? What brother? My brother. The one sitting next to me. Is this some kind of joke? There's no one next to you. And in the interview, you told me you had no brothers.
Confused, I turned around and saw my brother. He was smiling in a macabre way. His face was completely deformed and his eyes were bloodshot. He had a grin from ear to ear. Behind him, peeking out of his back, was the black demon I had seen earlier. He was smiling as he pulled out his long tongue that went like a tube into my brother's ear.
I told you not to mention me!
Suddenly, my brother stood up and with abysmal force, he picked me up and threw me against the wall. He started walking in my direction with the demon behind, still spying on me over his shoulder.
Hey, what's going on? Are you alright?
My boss couldn't see my brother. Did he hypnotize him? Is he invisible?
You still don't get it, Alan. I am not invisible, and I didn't hypnotize anyone.
How did he know what I was thinking? Did I speak out loud without realizing it?
No, I know everything you're thinking, Alan. You still don't get it. You don't have any brothers, dummy. You're the one who's possessed.
What? Security! Come immediately!
that's the end of my work experience at Burger King, and possibly any other. I still don't know if I'm really possessed or if I've just gone crazy. Sometimes I wake up during the night laughing out loud, and when I look out the window, I see the demon walking around outside my room. I know he could come in whenever he wants, but he likes to provoke me, to make fun of me. I don't think I'll ever get out of here, but on second thought, maybe that's for the best.
Hey guys, my name is Alan, and let me tell you, I'm a big pizza fanatic. I like to try every flavor you can possibly imagine, whether it's exotic or not. If there's pizza, I'll be there. Anyway, every time a new pizza place opens, I go there to buy it. Do you know why? Because I'm terrified of pizza deliveries. It may seem strange, but after I tell you my story, I'm sure you'll agree with me. It all started one normal night. It was 4 a.m. and the doorbell woke me up. It was probably a kid playing a joke on me, so I slept on. The next day, I watched the security camera to see if the kid was a neighbor I recognized, but to my surprise, it wasn't. The person who had rung my doorbell was a pizza delivery guy. But he was no ordinary pizza delivery guy. Something was wrong with him. The man had no lips. His teeth were crooked and rotten, and his mouth was huge. But what scared me the most was the look on his face. The person knew where the security camera was, and I felt that when I looked at him. He looked me straight in the eyes. Pizza delivery. After those short but terrifying words, the man dropped off the pizza and left. When I went to check my front door, the pizza was still there. I had the audacity to open it, and when I did, I almost threw up. The pizza was rotten, full of maggots and bugs. I threw it in the trash and saved the video just in case. From that day on, the nightmare started to repeat itself. Every day at dawn, this man would ring my doorbell, and after saying pizza delivery, he would just leave. I called the police several times, and once they even arrested him, but they let him go very quickly. Why would they arrest him? For bringing me a pizza? The only option I had was to confront him, but to tell you the truth, I was scared to death. This man was scary, and I didn't know what he was capable of. I let everything take its natural course until one day, I discovered that if you don't take care of these things, they will take care of you. This was a Saturday night. My wife had taken our children to their grandparents' house where they would spend the weekend. I was alone in the house, or so I thought. I was about to leave the bathroom when suddenly, in the bathtub, I saw something that caught my attention. It was a slice of rotten pizza, and to make it even worse, the pizza was hot. Someone had left it here recently. Upon my discovery, I noticed eyes watching me from the dining room. I ran to the bathroom door and the invader came rushing in, but I managed to close the door first. On the other side, the violent knocking was not long in coming. This person was desperate to get into the bathroom. I didn't know what he wanted or what he could do to me, but I definitely didn't want to find out. Seconds, minutes, and hours passed. I wanted to get out of the bathroom and try to escape, but I knew that if I did, this man could catch me. I listened as footsteps headed towards the dining room door, the only way out of my house. That's when I came up with a plan. Open the door, run to the kitchen, grab my cell phone, and hide in the bathroom again. That way I could call the police and save myself. I opened the door and started to run, but something stopped me. Not one, but 3 men knocked me down. They were all dressed like pizza delivery guys, but unlike the man who was harassing me, they had strange and terrifying animal masks. From the dining room came the man who, without the mask, was scarier than any other, the man who visited me at night. "Please don't do anything to me. All my money is in my mattress. It has a lock on the side of the wall. Take everything." After a signal from the stalker's head, all the delivery guys with masks started to destroy my house. They pulled out drawers, broke the furniture, and threw any papers everywhere. It was as if they were looking for something, but they didn't really stop to look at anything. At the same time, the unmasked man came towards me with a pizza box while 2 of the other masked men were holding me. Without warning, the man started shoving rotten pizza into my mouth. I could feel the worms, the bugs, and the rotten cheese all over my tongue at the same time. I wanted to vomit, but before I could get anything out of my mouth, the unmasked man put his foot in my mouth so I couldn't spit out the food.
Come on, I thought you liked pizza.
With all my strength, I managed to free my right arm, and grabbing my attacker's foot, I pulled him back and he fell. I hit the man holding my other arm and ran as fast away from my house as I could. In just a few seconds, the men were already catching up to me. One lunged at me and grabbed my feet, while the other three grabbed my arms and ran. As the four men held me outside my house, the unmasked man approached me with a screwdriver that he pulled out of his pocket. The man sat on top of me and began to rub the tool in the center of my chest, indicating that this is where he was going to stick it.
Please, don't hurt me. I haven't done anything to you. I have a wife and children that I love. They won't know what to do without me. Please stop.
Ignoring me, the man raised the screwdriver, ready to attack me, but he never did. The man stopped completely, not because of my speech, but because behind him several policemen were pointing their guns at him. Once they were all arrested, I learned that my neighbors saw the men entering my house and immediately called the police. Under heavy interrogation, the unmasked men confessed that they were not really delivery guys, but had been hired to kill me. The whole show with the pizza and the disguises were a ruse to make the police think that I was killed by psychopaths or members of some strange cult. Shortly after, they also confessed that it was my wife who had ordered the hit. She never went to see her parents, but to her lover instead. She hoped that after I had been killed, she could keep the house and live with another man. Today, we're on trial, and I'm about to win. Nowadays, I live a quiet life with my children, and we're all pizza fanatics. But as I told you before, from that day on, I'm always going to pick it up on my own, lest I run into the wrong delivery guy.
When I was 8 years old, my parents took in someone named Julio as a foster kid. I think my parents just got greedy and wanted to turn foster care into a profitable business or something, because they hardly did any background checks on the kids they sheltered. I remember the day Julio arrived at my house. He was small for his age, skinny but had a big head with messy hair. He also had some cuts and bruises on his face, so he'd definitely seen some bad days. He wore an oversized tattered jacket which smelled terrible. Of all the kids to come to my house, he looked the most defeated, yet strangely suspicious. I've never known what happened with Julio's parents or why he was brought into foster care, but it couldn't have been good for sure. I went to shake his hand. "Welcome, Julio. I'm Andy." He eyed me from top to bottom without blinking once, and then walked away. My dad snapped, seeing his don't care attitude, and screamed,
"Hey, you get back here right now! When my son speaks to you, you answer, understand?"
He was putting Julio in his place, at least from his perspective.
"You are nothing in this house compared to our son, got it?"
"Dad, I told him, leave him alone." Julio cut me off. "No, he's right. I'm sorry." Suddenly his demeanor changed, as though he knew this was precisely what he should say to keep my father quiet.
"Looks like you're a smart boy. Come, I'll show you your room."
Julio and I shared a room. My parents bought these bunk beds to save space. I slept at the top and Julio slept at the bottom. That night after dinner, I went to bed early. Julio just sat near the window, just watching the empty streets. I fell asleep, but was interrupted by a sudden sound. It was this clipping sound, not too loud, but hammering. I opened my eyes and saw a pair of eyes behind my feet. I could tell it was Julio. He was climbing up the bunk ladder just enough to reveal the top of his head. His cold eyes gave me the creeps. "Julio, do you need anything?" "I wanted to ask you a question, Andy. What do you do when you can't sleep?" I don't know. Try to divert my mind, I guess?" "We aren't that different then." He climbed up slowly and sat on my bed next to my legs. "Want to see how I divert my mind?" Julio started biting his nails. The clipping sound that his teeth made while ripping off every last bite of his fingernails made my skin crawl. He then showed me his hands. Each finger was covered with a red rash, and the skin around the nails didn't look good. They were swollen and filled with pus. Oh my God, you must be in pain. You don't know anything about pain. You're just a stupid boy who got lucky. He went back to his bed, terrorizing me the entire night. The more time I spent with Julio, the more I realized he wasn't a normal kid. There's a dark side in Julio which he hides from the world. One afternoon, I happened to come home early from school. I called out to my mom.
I'm taking a shower, honey. There's pasta for you in the fridge. Have at it and give some to Julio as well.
I ran to my room, but Julio wasn't there. I figured he must be in the backyard, so I checked there next. Outside, Julio was standing on a cardboard box, staring into my mom's bathroom. There was a sick smile on his face that I'll never forget. I wanted to scream at him, but something choked me up. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the loss of innocence upon realizing what Julio was up to. Suddenly, he noticed me and his smile faded. An angry expression took over and he got down from the box. He walked right back into the house without any regret. It was like he was doing something important and I had ruined it all. I followed him back to my room. I wanted to punch him in the face.
You sick freako! Shh! I think your mom's coming.
My mom came to our room with a fresh towel wrapped around her head, wearing a bathrobe.
I forgot to tell you guys. Your dad and I will be going out for dinner tonight. You two better behave and stay at home.
Sure, Mrs. Vermont. Have a good time with your husband. He had that same creepy smile from before. I felt so dirty around him. How could an 11-year-old be so distorted, so rotten? That night, my parents left and Julio got busy watching movies in the living room. That's when I took the chance. The only thing he brought with him was an old tattered suitcase. He kept it under the bed and guarded it with his life. I tiptoed back to my room, taking this perfect opportunity to go through his stuff. There were a few old t-shirts, a pair of trousers, and a small notebook. As I opened the notebook, my palms got sweaty. I found two $50 bills inside the notebook and a hospital ID. The name of the hospital was Serene Mental Institution, with a mugshot of Julio looking more evil than ever. His date of birth was April 22nd, 1990, making him at least 23 to 24 years old. And under the patient status, he was labeled as extremely violent. My throat went dry and I could barely breathe. The foster kid whom my parents brought home is a full-grown adult. He only looks like a child. I looked out to the living room. Julio was still sitting on the couch watching TV. I locked the door of my room and called my parents. They told me to sit tight and that they'd be home soon with the cops. Suddenly, the doorknob started twisting, followed by Julio's voice. Why's the door locked, Andy? This is my room too! Open the door, Andy, now! I didn't answer him at that point because I was scared to death. That's when the banging started. I said open it! Open the door, you little brat! I know the truth, Julio. The cops will be here soon! Just as I mentioned this, everything went silent. A few seconds later, Julio passed a handwritten note through the gap under the door, and I heard his footsteps running away. This is what he wrote. You know, there's a lot more like me.
Never stop for gas at night. There's a reason why that saying exists. I'm Brenda, and I was coming home from a party last Sunday. My friend lived on the outskirts of town and I ended up staying late. My friend told me to crash at his place, but I refused as I had to go home to my dog. Driving down the long, empty highway surrounded by vast fields in the middle of the night felt like quite a stress reliever. I rolled down the window and let the air brush across my face. As I went to turn on the music, I saw that I was running out of gas. When I reached the gas station, I found it completely empty. The blinking light of the small snack store hinted that it was open. There wasn't anyone outside to help with refilling, so I got out of the car and started walking towards the storefront. As I said, I had just come from a party, so I was wearing high heels with a short flared skirt. The ambience was so quiet that when I walked, my footsteps echoed into the night. Suddenly, I saw movement in a dark corner and I stopped. Someone was standing right next to the store, but he kind of hid himself in a shadow. It was a man.
Excuse me? Are you going to help me refill my car?
I would love to do that for you.
The man came into the light, revealing his appearance. He had a box-shaped face and his eyes were creepy. He had long, thin hair that gave him a messed up appearance. He wore a dingy blue jumpsuit and was holding a big crowbar in one hand.
Are you the owner of this place?
Yes, and I'm at your service. Should I call you ma'am?
He tilted his neck while laughing uncomfortably. His eyes never blinked and they were fixated on me like magnets. By this point, I was extremely creeped out, so I turned and started walking back to my car. I was hoping to get the job done and set out on the road as soon as possible. The man walked behind me. Even with my back turned, I could tell he was grinning at me the entire time. As soon as I reached my car, I went to open the door and the man suddenly picked up speed and pushed the door closed, stopping me from getting in.
I can't let you get in before I'm done filling your tank.
What? Why? I've never heard of such a thing.
I moved away from him in fear while pelting him with my questions.
What if you drive off without even paying me, huh?
Are you crazy? Get away from my car. I'll get a refill somewhere else.
But the next one is miles away. What if you run out of gas?
That's none of your concern, mister. I can...
Patrick!
What?
My name is Patrick.
He scratched his back with the crowbar and again tilted his head to one side, giving me a top-to-bottom stare. Now I felt a cold shiver race down my spine. His body language seemed threatening. He did look like he would lunge at me any time with that gigantic metal tool, so I remained quiet. The man started filling the tank. Whatever he did, he didn't take his eyes off of me once, and that smile stretched his face, growing bigger by the second.
You're good to go now.
Saying this, he backed off from my car. I unlocked the car doors and jumped back in. A little ray of hope that the guy might just be creepy and not some psycho killer had just started to rise in my heart when I noticed a hand waving at me from inside the store. The hand was at ground level and trying its best to grab the handle, but then it dropped. It took me a second to realize that whoever that hand belonged to was probably lying on the floor of that store. The man suddenly snapped his fingers right in front of my face.
Hello, what about my money?
Yeah, sure.
I searched through my wallet and the man suspiciously looked behind him. He didn't realize that I had seen the hand. He looked back at me. The evil smile was long gone and a confused face watched me instead. After handing him the money, he turned around and started walking back to the store. Now that he had his back faced towards me, I saw his dirty white t-shirt. There were 2 smeared stripes, which at first looked like red paint, but then the horror jolted me.
Do you need anything else?
He again turned and yelled. I could sense anxiety in his voice. He just wanted me to leave and I now knew why. I started the engine and drove away. The man stopped and watched me leave. When I was out of his sight, I pulled over to call 911, but it would take time for the cops to arrive. So I grabbed a small tire iron from the trunk of my car and took off my heels. I ran back to the gas station, but this time, I snuck towards it from the other side. I reached the outside of the window and peeked into the store. The man was standing inside and talking to someone. Once I heard what he was saying, my blood turned to ice.
Well, looks like you ain't as lucky as her. God is great. Now, let's finish what we started, shall we?
No! No!
I saw the man raising his crowbar, aiming for a woman lying on the ground. I smashed the window with my tire iron, breaking it into pieces.
Stop!
You
I shouldn't have let you go in the first place!
He ran to the exit to catch me, but the girl lying on the floor bit his leg.
You witches! This is why you all need to be punished!
I quickly vaulted from the window ledge and bashed him on the head with my tire iron. He was knocked unconscious almost immediately. The cops arrived and took him away. He was cursing me the entire time. The girl who I saved was Nina. She too had stopped for gas on the way home, and this crazy gas station owner planned to make her his victim. When I first saw him, he was hiding Nina's scooter at the back of the gas station to avoid any suspicion. But thank God I was there in time. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened to her.
When I first took the job of a manager at McDonald's, the owner walked me through a few rules that I'd have to follow to keep the place running. Look, Nathan, no matter what Joe says, don't ever let him be Ronald McDonald. Sorry, what? I know it sounds weird, but trust me on this one. Joe is the cleaning guy who worked for McDonald's, and he seemed sweet irrespective of how he looked. I've always believed in not judging a book by its cover, so when the owner mentioned that, I got confused. But what's wrong with Joe? No one can answer that. He just has this crazy fandom for Ronald McDonald. For months, he's been pestering me to allow him to dress up as Ronald and let him entertain our guests, but that can't happen. Never, ever. I hope that's clear to you. I guess so. Good. You can go back to work now. Best of luck. I didn't want to ask him more about the matter, as it was my first day and I still needed the job. So I just decided to follow what he said. The next day, the moment I stepped into work, I was face to face with Joe. Holding a broom and wearing an ear-to-ear smile on his face, Joe asked,
"What time will you be free? I need to talk to you about work."
Let's see, Joe. It's my first day and a lot is expected of me. Maybe when we both get done, I'll hear you out.
Okay, I'll finish with my work as well.
The day started well and customers kept coming, but when the clock struck 7, I heard a kid scream coming from the tables. I rushed over and saw the kid crying and his mother yelling at one of our waitresses.
I'll sue you guys for this. How irresponsible are you? Leaving a nail on a child's food?
Excuse me, ma'am, I'm the manager here. Please tell me what the issue is. The woman showed me a big nail and said that she found it in her kid's burger. We compensated them with free meals and gave them enough coupons for them to eat for a month at McDonald's. The owner was out of town and I wanted to do my best to stop this news from spreading, so I called out an emergency meeting. I asked the chefs how this could have happened, to which they said they had no idea. No one could make out how a nail had ended up in a burger. We need to do something to keep this news from spreading, guys. If this gets to the owner, all of us can kiss our jobs goodbye.
How about I dress up as Ronald and entertain our customers? I have so many ideas that'll make them come here for more. Please, Nathan.
Everyone looked at me like it would be a terrible mistake, but judging the situation, I made the call. Something is better than nothing, right? Fine, Joe, you're on it. Do whatever it takes to blow our customers away.
You won't regret this.
Joe left and we all got on with the rest of our day. I could hardly sleep that night, though. I was worried that the owner was going to snap at me once he found out what happened today. The next day, when I arrived at work, I didn't see Joe anywhere. I started asking around for him, and then the restaurant door opened and in walked Joe. He was dressed as Ronald McDonald, and I kid you not, nothing about his appearance seemed appealing. The costume was normal, but the makeup was a little over the top. It was heavily caked on, smudged all over his not-so-inviting face, which served to make him a creepier version of Ronald. But he would be giving kids balloons and toys, so no one was going to focus on his looks. Customers started to come in, and Joe stood at the door greeting them. Everything was going fine until I overheard a conversation between Joe and a 9-year-old girl.
I don't like hide and seek.
Then we can play this new game. It's called Tickle Fight.
What kind of a game is that?
fun. You can tickle all over my belly and I will tickle your feet. What do you think?
I don't want to play that either.
The kid went back to her table and I immediately called Joe to my office.
Sandra said you wanted to see me.
When I confronted him, he spoke like what he said to the 9-year-old girl wasn't that big of a deal. Joe, you can't touch the kids or ask them to touch you. We can get in trouble for that.
Oh, I just wanted to make the kid smile. She was being so grumpy from the start.
No tickle fights, okay? Maybe just entertain them without any physical interaction. Is that clear?
Fine. I will try plan B.
Joe left with a sour face and I began to consider the owner's words. Did I make a mistake saying yes to Joe? I might have rested in the office for 10 minutes when I heard a scream. Ah! Are you crazy? You just gave us a heart attack! This isn't funny! I again rushed outside and saw Joe sitting in the back seat of a customer's car. The couple was leaving with their takeout. When they got inside the car, Joe jumped on them, screaming.
I'm loving it!
I took the customer's reproach on behalf of Joe and returned their money by giving them free food. Once the customers left, I became furious. What the hell is wrong with you? You know what? Everyone warned me about what a freak you are, but I just kept giving you chances. You're fired, Joe. Just take your things and get lost! Joe didn't say a single word. His mouth hung open like he had just received the shock of his life, and his left eye twitched. Tears rolled down his cheek, but not once did he cry. Taking his red wig off, he said in a low, creepy voice,
You will regret this, Nathan.
I went home in a bad mood. I don't remember when I passed out on the couch, but a sudden sound woke me up. I realized it was coming from my room. As I pushed open the door of my room, I saw the most horrible sight. Joe had gotten in from the bedroom window I left open, and he was scribbling all over the wall with red crayons. Joe? What do you think you're doing? He turned his face to me, and his makeup was messily smudged, making him look more horrible than ever.
I'm loving it! I'm loving it!
He went on ruining my walls until the cops came and took him away. I later heard he was sent to a mental institution. Somewhere deep down, I think the nail ending up in one of our burgers had to have been Joe's work.
The first time I met Mr. Bates was at Julie's office. He came to our foster home to adopt a son. Julie was a good foster mother and I loved being with her and my foster cousins. So suddenly getting your life turned 180 degrees caused me a lot of trouble. And that's where this story begins. Mr. Bates and his wife lived in the countryside, close to the mountains, and they wanted nothing more than to complete their family. So I reluctantly said goodbye to my old family and moved into this big house in a remote area to live with my new one. The house was even bigger inside. Mr. Bates was holding my trunk and we walked up to a room. The door was closed. Mr. Bates knocked on it and the woman in a feeble voice replied,
Come right in, dear.
It was my first time meeting my new mom, so I was nervous. I looked at Mr. Bates and he gave me a weird smile.
Go ahead. Open the door.
We went in. The first thing I noticed was the damp ceiling filling the room with a musty smell. Then my eyes went to the corner. There sat a skinny woman in a pale yellow dress by the window. The wind from the window made her thin hair dangle.
Come here. Don't be afraid.
I got closer to her. She stretched her arms out to me, but I hesitated.
Don't be afraid, Billy. Come to Mommy.
Honey, his name is Joshua.
Oh, yes. My brain. Sit down here, Joshua. This is your new home.
I sat down and she watched me with an uncomfortable smile. Her eyes were wide like a night owl. And then Mr. Bates came and sat beside me. He kept his hand on my shoulder and said,
You will have no problem here, Joshua. We can give you everything. But in return, we want you to be our son.
I looked at him with teary eyes, thinking how lucky I was all of the sudden. But in reality, that was far from the truth. They took me to a big room, and that's when I started sensing trouble. The room was filled with kids' toys and had a big Mickey Mouse painted on the walls.
This is your room. Do you like it?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell them how odd it was for the room of a 12-year-old. Even the furniture was that of a toddler size. I could barely fit in the bed, but the Bates didn't seem bothered. They just grinned at me the entire time without blinking.
Now, who's ready for a bath, huh?
Sorry, what?
Take off your clothes. I'll give you a bath.
Excuse me?
Miss Bates suddenly stopped smiling and screamed,
Take them off! Now! You always listen to Mommy!
Mr. Bates, what's going on? I'm not a kid, I can bathe.
Just do what your mother says, son. You don't want her getting angry.
What the hell? No way I'm letting your weird wife bathe me.
Billy boy, don't be so moody now.
Who the hell is Billy? What's happening here?
Miss Bates grabbed my shoulders and pulled me close to her face.
You are Billy. From now on, you'll be like our son.
That's when it hit me. By our son, they meant someone else. Suddenly, my eyes went to the bedstand and I saw a photograph. The Bates were there standing with a toddler in their arms.
Look, I'm not Billy, I'm Joshua. Please, just send me back to Julie.
I didn't bring you here just to send you back.
I think he will feel better with the pacifier. Bring it, honey.
What? No!
Miss Bates held my arms and Mr. Bates opened a nearby drawer. Man, that woman had inhuman strength. She looked lean, but her grasp was like that of a python. Mr. Bates came back with a blue shiny pacifier, like the kind that is used to calm little kids. He shoved it inside my mouth and I gagged, but he kept pushing it up against my lips so I couldn't spit it out. After a moment of struggling and revulsion, I passed out. When I opened my eyes, I found myself tied to a chair. In front of me was a kid's table with a bowl of cereal and a feeding bottle. My clothes were gone and I was changed into a diaper. A freaking diaper. I couldn't talk as the pacifier was still inside my mouth. It tasted like it hadn't been cleaned in months. I was trying my best not to vomit. They even tied a bib around my neck. I was dressed up like a toddler while being a 12-year-old boy. It was a nightmare. I tried to shake my body when I heard a sound coming from behind.
Happy birthday, dear Billy.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Mr. and Mrs. Bates placed a cake in front of me. It had a number candle, 3. So, this is what they wanted from me? To be a 3-year-old? Mr. Bates removed the pacifier from my mouth, and I breathed unimpeded after a long time.
Please, I want to go home. I'm not Billy. Please, just let me go home.
But they kept on singing and clapping like maniacs. I had to blow out the candles, because after a point I accepted my fate. No one will know about this. I'm stuck here forever now.
I'm gonna release your hands, Billy, so you can cut the cake. Now, don't try to do anything wrong, okay?
I nodded my head. What else could I do? Mr. Bates freed my hands. Suddenly, the doorbell rang 3 to 4 times continuously. Whoever was at the door didn't want to wait. I flung the cake on Miss Bates and jumped from the chair to run.
No! He's running away! Stop him! Stop him! I want him!
Mr. Bates chased me and I hurried down the stairs. I had just one chance. One opportunity to get everything I ever wanted. Freedom! I lunged at the main door and opened it with all of my strength, yelling at the top of my voice.
Help me! Please!
On the other side of the door stood Julie with 2 cops. I fainted in her arms. 3 days after I woke up in my foster home after having had a fever, Julie said I mumbled in my sleep for help and screamed I'm not Billy over and over. The story went that Mr. and Mrs. Bates had a son named Billy. When he was 3 years old, he passed away. And since then, The duo became psychos. Before me, they had tried to adopt 2 other boys around my age and tortured them into being their long-lost toddler. After I left, Julie got a call from the officials at the court about this freak husband and wife. Thank God she arrived before the Bates made things even worse. After that, I never agreed to adoption. It's better to be a foster kid than to be someone's dead son. I've had creepy encounters with delivery guys in the past, but this one has got to be the creepiest of them all. It made me question my own sanity. About 2 weeks ago, my girlfriend came over for some Netflix and chill. After a while, we got hungry and decided to order pizza. I picked up my phone and called a Domino's pizza joint not too far from my apartment. It rang once before a guy picked up.
Domino's Pizza? May I take your order, please?
He emphatically belched. He pretty much sounded like one of those hyper telemarketers.
Yeah, I'll have 2 large pizzas with some extra onion rings on top.
I responded.
Noted, sir. Your order will be delivered shortly.
It wasn't the first time I was ordering pizza from them, so I didn't doubt the assurance he gave.
Sure. Thanks, bro.
I said before I ended the call. We were hopeful the pizza would arrive within 30 minutes, but after 4 long gut-wrenching hours, it still hadn't arrived. My girlfriend got tired of waiting and decided to leave. I was then left alone in the apartment to possibly die of starvation. A few minutes after my girlfriend left, I heard 3 firm knocks on the door. I thought she might have forgotten something, so I briskly walked to the door to open it. But as the door swung open, I was shocked because it wasn't the face of my girlfriend staring back at me. It was the face of some disturbing-looking dude with raggedy hair and bloodshot eyes. His eyes were sunken, and the bags around them were massive. He even looked tattered, and he may or may not have had a blood stain on his shirt, now that I think about it. Of course, at the moment, I wasn't really paying attention to all those extra details. The only things that stood out for me were the Domino's branded shirt he had on, and the box of pizzas in his hand.
What the hell, dude? I've been waiting for this thing for hours!
I snapped at him. He didn't say a word. He just stood there with a blank expression on his face. His head was slightly tilted to the left for some reason. I would have assumed he was high, but I couldn't smell a drop of alcohol or weed on him. I at least expected to hear an apology or something, but none was tendered.
You know what, Richard?
I peered closer at the name tag pinned to his chest.
Brad's son. I'll take this up with your manager. Give me that.
I grudgingly pulled the boxes of pizza out of his hand. If it wasn't for the fact that my stomach was rumbling like an earthquake, my ego probably wouldn't have let me take the pizza. I gave him the stink eye before slamming the door in his face. It was already after dark, but at least I finally had something to eat. I laid back on the couch and got ready to dig in. But as I flipped one of the boxes open, I met another shocker. One of the pizza slices had a huge chunk bitten out of it. I was livid. I felt like breaking a baseball bat over that guy's head, or running him over with a car. But fortunately for the guy, I lacked the energy to perform any of those feats. I dropped the pizza back on the table and grabbed my phone instead. I called the Domino's restaurant again. But unlike before, I didn't get a speedy response. The call rang about 5 or 6 times before I finally got a response.
Hello, this is Domino's. How may I help you?
This time, the voice on the other side sounded more mature and calm.
Yeah, can you please transfer me to the manager? I'd like to speak to him about my order and the delivery service I received. I'm the manager. What's the problem?
The man asked.
My pizza was delivered 4 hours late, and it looked like some douchebag had eaten out of it. Oh, that's terrible. Did you get the name of your delivery guy?
The manager asked.
Yes, his name was Richard Bradson.
The call line suddenly went cold. I could hear him breathing on the other side, but he wasn't saying anything.
Hello? Are you still there?
I asked.
Yeah, I'm here.
His voice abruptly began to sound jittery and nervous. I could immediately tell something was wrong.
When did you receive this delivery?
The manager asked.
At about 8:27 p.m. this evening.
I responded. The line went cold again. I was tempted to ask if there was a problem, but I just decided to wait for his response. I grabbed a piece of pizza so I could calm my raging stomach while I waited. Eventually, he responded with a stern tone.
I'm afraid that's impossible, son. Richard Bradson is dead.
Instantly, I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Maybe he was playing a prank or just trying to pull my leg. I wondered.
That's ridiculous. I just saw him like 3 minutes ago.
I asserted.
I don't know what to tell you, son, but it's all over the news. You can go see for yourself. He died in a freak car accident earlier this afternoon. He had never missed an order up until today. It's just tragic, really. He was...
While the manager was still speaking, I slowly lowered my phone onto the couch and tuned to the news channel. I was left completely horror-stricken by the first frame. Pictures of the same guy who was standing in front of my door minutes ago were all over the news. He and 3 others were involved in a crash. He had been declared deceased. I felt like I was losing my mind. I jolted off the couch and dashed to the lobby. But there was no trace of him. I even ran out into the cold, dark street, but he was gone. I walked back to my apartment, bolted the doors, and just sat on my couch. I tried to make sense of the entire evening, but nothing made sense.
It was a day I will never forget. I returned from school late in the evening, and after watching movies for a while, I got a little peckish. Luckily, a new Popeyes chicken fast food restaurant just opened down the street, so I decided to go order some food. It was dark by the time I arrived, and as soon as I stepped in, I noticed there weren't any customers at the restaurant. Strangely enough, there weren't any workers around either, just a weird-looking guy standing behind the counter. Now, I'm not the type to fixate on looks, but I immediately knew something was off about this guy. His body was extremely skinny, like he was sick or severely malnourished. He had big, bulging eyes and a scruffy beard. Even more unsettling was that he had scabs and wounds all over his body. Some were bandaged, while others were left to fester. I couldn't fathom how in the world they would let someone like that take food orders.
Excuse me? Can I get some service, please? For crying out loud, would you say something?
I yelled at the top of my voice. His tired, bloodshot eyes swiveled toward me. He stared at me with a face full of rage, as though I had disturbed something important he was doing. If looks could kill, I would have already been dead by then.
Welcome to Popeyes' famous fried chicken. May I take your order?
He moaned lifelessly. I couldn't help but noticing how jagged and yellowish his teeth were. I ordered 3 spicy chicken wings with lots of ketchup and a Diet Coke. He requested for my name. I was hesitant, but since it was part of the order, I gave it to him.
Jennifer,
I said.
Coming right up, Jennifer. I just know you're gonna love it.
He smiled ghoulishly and then retreated into the kitchen. I knew something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut. More so, I could also smell something putrid coming from the closet in the kitchen. The stench was so strong it made me nauseous. I had to know what was going on back there. So, I quietly snuck into the kitchen and eavesdropped on him. I noticed him preparing the chicken I ordered, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. He vomited something disgusting into the ketchup bottle, shook it, and then spread it all over the chicken he was about to serve me. I was so sickened I almost threw up in my mouth. Suddenly, his head snapped towards me.
You're not supposed to be in here! I'm almost done with your order!
He hissed. Cold sweat ran down the back of my neck.
Actually, I changed my mind. I don't want the order anymore.
I don't think so. You're gonna eat your chicken, and you're going to enjoy it. After all, everyone loves the chicken from Popeyes.
Then, he grabbed a kitchen knife off the counter and I immediately made a run for it. He sprinted after me with the knife in his left hand and a box of chicken in his right.
Come back here and eat your chicken!
He yelled at the top of his voice. I sprang through the restaurant door and into the parking lot. Despite being so gangly, he was incredibly fast. In In fact, he was matching me stride for stride. His long, scrawny arms were only a few inches away from my head, but as we ran into the road, a truck sped out of nowhere and rammed through him before he could reach me. With adrenaline pumping hard through my veins, I kept running. I didn't even bother to look back. After a few minutes, I arrived at my house. I bolted through the door and locked it behind me. My mom had gone away on a business trip that day. I tried calling her, but the line wasn't going through.
Dear God, what am I gonna do? What if he's still alive? What if he follows me home?
I locked all the doors and windows. Then I took a baseball bat and waited at the front door. I waited till midnight, but he never showed up. After a while, I lay down on the floor close to the door, and I slept off. Then suddenly, around 2 a.m. in the morning, I was awakened by the sound of dogs barking in the streets. Then, the handle of my front door began to shake violently. The door jerked and trembled so much I thought it was going to break down at any minute. It was him. It could only be him.
Jennifer, your order is ready! Open the door! Jennifer! Jennifer!
He hissed as he pounded on my door. Immediately, I took the phone and called the police.
Come quickly! There's a crazy guy at my house, and he's got a knife! Yes, 113 Woodrow Street. Please, hurry!
While the call was going on, he started hacking at my door with the kitchen knife. My heart raced as I saw the knife slide in and out of the frail wooden door.
Leave me alone!
I cried, but that didn't stop him. Suddenly, I heard the sounds of police sirens from a distance, and the door stopped moving. I heaved a sigh of relief. It was finally over. When I opened the door, the man was no longer there. All that was left was a box of Popeyes chicken with my name written on it. When the police arrived, we drove over to the restaurant. The man wasn't there anymore. However, when they checked the closet in the back, they found the dead body of one of the workers in the closet. He had multiple stab wounds on his chest. The management told the police that the man they were looking for was fired after he was caught adding bodily fluid to people's orders. Afterward, he was admitted into a mental asylum. Apparently, he broke out and came straight back to work. I'm just glad I had the good sense to check on him after placing the order. Needless to say, I haven't gone to my Popeyes chicken restaurant ever since. I've always heard creepy stories about serial killers and home break-ins, but I never actually thought it would happen to me. Last summer, before my semester exams were scheduled to start, I decided to go stay with my parents for a while. My dad was a district attorney and my mom a politician. They were a match made in heaven. They were also very busy with work, as you would imagine, so they weren't always home. As usual, they had business to attend to that weekend, so I was left all alone in the house. It was great news, or so I thought. That evening, I was watching a show on TV. Suddenly, the show was interrupted by a breaking news report. Notorious serial killer Manuel Ortiz, aka Machete Manuel, has just escaped from prison, and his whereabouts are currently unknown. Residents are advised to lock their doors and remain within their homes at least till the next morning. The news then went on to show the picture of the psychotic serial killer that had just escaped. Just his looks were enough to make my blood curdle. He had tattoos inked all over his face, neck, and body. He even tattooed his eyeballs deep black to give himself a more demonic look. Platinum-colored grills lined the front of his teeth, and he had self-inflicted scars all over his hands, one for each person he had killed. My throat ran dry and my thoughts ran riot as I imagined the possibility of him coming to our home, especially since my dad was the district attorney that put him away. Of course, that was after he had already killed, dismembered, and mutilated about 30 people with his famous machete. I wasn't going to take any chances. I triple-checked the doors and slammed the windows shut. Before heading upstairs to hopefully do some studying, I left our dog Bruno on the living room carpet. That's where he liked to sleep. I bolted the doors to my room and hit the reading table. I was so scared out of my mind, I had to speak to myself to stay sane. Calm down, Lucas. Even if he did come here, there's no way he could get in. I intended to read throughout the night, but I dozed off 5 minutes after.
Later that night, I was awakened by the sound of water running from a faucet onto a sink. My drowsy eyes beamed at the alarm clock on the table. The time was 11:35. Crap, I must have left the water running. I would have just ignored the sound, but then I heard frantic barks. Why is Bruno barking? I asked myself as I slowly walked down the stairs, one lethargic stride at a time. My feet felt like sandbags were tied to them, and my vision was blurry. It was a miracle I didn't end up barrel rolling down the stairs. Suddenly, Bruno's barking waned into a whisper, like the moaning of a wounded animal, and then it stopped abruptly. "Bruno? Bruno! Here, boy!" I whispered as I arrived at the foot of the stairs, but there was no response. At this point, my heart was beating fast, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. Suddenly, the lights went out and everything was pitch black. "Oh God, what's going on?" I whispered to myself as I flipped the light switches repeatedly. Luckily, I had my phone with me, so I turned on its flashlight and then made my way into the living room. "Is anyone here? Hello? Bruno, are you there?" I yelled out, hoping, begging for this nightmare to just end. Suddenly, I heard the window slam. The jolt it gave me was enough to drive sleep away from my eyes. "Is somebody there? Hello?" I called out again to no one in particular. Bruno was no longer in the living room. I walked towards the front door, and that was when I saw it. The locks were broken, and the door was wide open. I also noticed that other houses in the neighborhood had lights in them, so someone must have cut the power to my house. I made my way toward the basement door to check our fuse box. I arrived at the fuse box, which was right behind the basement door. I was shocked to find that it had been switched off. I obviously didn't do it, so I had no doubt that there was someone else in the house with me. I flipped the switch and the lights came back on. "Oh, thank God," I whispered to myself. But just before I could breathe easy, I looked towards the kitchen, and standing right at the entrance was a man with a machete. A man who, without a doubt, was Machete Manuel. "Hola, cabron! I just have one question for you. Is your jefe home?" Manuel grunted from across the room with a distinct Hispanic accent. I, however, was so petrified I couldn't say a word. I couldn't even move. "Are you deaf or something, pendejo?" He barked and then charged towards me. Without thinking, I slammed and locked the basement door and then ran down the stairs. I heard the door shake and quake as Manuel tried to break in. I tripped over something at the foot of the stairs and crashed to the floor. My phone had also fallen out of my hand and the light had gone out. I rose to my feet. The basement was dark, but after a few misplaced slaps across the wall, I was able to hit the light switch. And that's when I saw it. Bruno's lifeless body sprawled on the floor of the stairs. He must have been strangled to death. "Bruno! Oh God! Why is this happening?" I could still hear his heavy footsteps stomping around upstairs. I can't find my phone. Oh God, what am I gonna do? Just then, I noticed the basement window. I quickly crawled through it and then ran over to our neighbor's house. I pounded on his door until he opened up. "You gotta help me! The serial killer, he's at my house right now!" The neighbor was the head of the neighborhood watch, so gathered a few other men and they went over to my house. Each man was armed with a shotgun and a rifle. When they got there, they found nothing but muddy boot prints and dirt stains. Afterward, they called my parents and the police. Not long after, we moved to a different house. It's been over a year now, and I still find it hard to sleep at night, especially when I remember they still haven't caught him. Have you ever felt like you were being watched? Have you ever felt the eyes of a stranger on you as you slept, or ate, or went for a walk? I have. Once. And to be honest, I still do. When I was 15, my family moved into a new house in the countryside. I loved it, at first. The open fields, the fresh air, the serenity. It was so much nicer than the city. The house itself was an old country home built sometime in the 1950s. Some of the locals swore the house was haunted, but it didn't seem that way to me. Sure, the floorboards were creaky and the windows in the attic were broken, but those were minor issues that could be handled in no time. Or so we thought. The morning after we moved in, well, things started to take a turn. Dad, we've got mail?
Mail? That can't be right.
We haven't registered this place as our new mailing address yet. Well, I checked the box yesterday and it was empty, so I'm quite sure that these ones came this morning. Maybe they're addressed to the previous owner.
Huh, that wouldn't make sense either. No one's lived in this place for nearly a decade. Let me see those.
What in the world? What's wrong? There's no stamps, but they're all addressed to us. It says... My dad set the letters ablaze, all of them. Each one was a variation of some kind, but the core message remained the same. Someone, somewhere, wanted us to leave our new home. My parents tried to laugh it off as some sort of prank by the locals to newcomers, but I wasn't as convinced. It wasn't until the following morning that we realized how wrong we were. Dad, there's mail again.
What?
There were more letters, each one similar to the last, bearing curses and pleas for us to leave the house. However, this time, there was something else. Is that our house?
I guess, but we don't know when it was taken. It could have been weeks or years even before we got here.
Oh my god! Healy's & Co. That's the name of the moving company that brought our stuff. This picture was taken 2 days ago.
We knew now that we had a case on our hands. The person sending the mail was probably a stalker. My dad called the cops, but they were convinced that this was all an elaborate joke that some local kid was playing on them. They assured us they'd look into it, and I guess that eased my parents' worries a bit. Little did we know the strangeness was just beginning. Over the next few days, the mail kept coming, but we kept ignoring them. We kept trying to pretend everything was normal, like we weren't being watched from a distance by some psychopath. One morning, we found 3 dead rats on our doorstep. Once, a box of blood-stained nails. It was around the same time that I started hearing noises in the house. There were creaks coming through the walls of my bedroom like someone was moving on the other side. The issue was that there was no room on the other side. I told my dad about them, but...
You're on edge, son, and that's totally fine. Anyone would be with these letters we've been getting. The police are looking into it. It'll be fine. And besides, this is a pretty old house. The wind can get in the roof and the floorboards. Not that weird to hear some creaks from time to time.
You're right. I guess that makes sense. But I wasn't convinced. Not truly. I knew there was something up, and when the noises didn't stop, I had to check it out for myself. One evening, when my parents weren't home, I placed my ear on the walls and listened for the creaks again. Something was definitely moving behind the wall. I ran down to my dad's garage and picked up a hammer and a crowbar. I moved my shelf aside and pried one of the wall's wooden bars loose. Dad is going to definitely kill me for this. Wait, what the? I grabbed a flashlight and pointed it at the hole I had just opened in my wall. There was a narrow tunnel within, barely wide enough for me to fit, and steep stairs that led down into the unknown. I knew I shouldn't go in. I knew I should wait for my parents or the cops, but my curiosity got the better of me. It was a tight squeeze, but I stepped into it and followed the trail until I arrived at a tiny basement underneath what must have been the living room. What I saw down there made my heart drop. Oh my God, someone's been living here this whole time.
Clever boy. I knew someone would find out about me sooner or later. They always do. I just didn't think it'd be so soon.
Who are you? What do you want?
Who am I? I should be asking you the same question. What gave you people the right to move into my house? My home! I won't leave. I'll never leave. It's mine, you hear me? Mine! I've already lost everything. My job, my wife. My life? But I won't lose this house too. Over my dead body. Do you think I enjoy this? You think I enjoy hurting you people? I warned the last couple who came here to leave. When they didn't listen, I had to take matters into my own hands. It seems I'm gonna have to do it again. You think you can run? You think you can hide? I will find you!
The cops arrived a few minutes later, and my parents followed not long after. By the time they went down to the secret corridor to the stalker's lair, the man was long gone. They found out that the tunnel led out to an old shed out back, and that was how he managed to get in and out without noticing. The stalker escaped, but they did manage to find something down there, an ID card belonging to one Mr. Hank Wilson. The man I saw was a shadow of his former self, all withered and hollow, but I'd recognize those deep blue eyes anywhere. Apparently, he was a businessman who lost his fortune many years ago in a bad investment. He lost everything. His car, his wife, his kids, and his house was foreclosed by the bank and put on the market. Most people around town assumed he jumped into the river on the other side of town, and that his ghost still stuck around the house. Little did they know that it was the man himself doing the haunting. Needless to say, by the time this info got to us the very next morning, my parents and I were already well on our way to my uncle's place the next state over. It's been a good few years since then, and last I checked, they hadn't caught old Hank. The house, his house, is still on the market.
I've come across some strange people in my life. That tends to happen when you work an 8-hour shift at a drive-thru located at the busiest intersection in the city. The weird, the eccentric, and once, just once, the downright evil. I don't work there anymore, you see. There are a lot of bad memories tied to that place. People I wish I didn't remember. Things I'd rather forget. I was fresh out of high school when I got a job at the local Burger King. I was taking a gap year and I thought it wouldn't hurt to have some extra cash in hand, so I went for it. It wasn't glamorous work by any means, far from it. Some customers were just the absolute worst, impossible to please, screaming at you for getting some overly convoluted order even the slightest bit wrong with mouthfuls full of slush and half-chewed bread. I hated every second of it. At least, every second that she wasn't around. Ashley Barrett, dark hair, green eyes. I thought she was the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. Still do. She worked the shift with me, and whenever she was around, we somehow managed to make those awful hours somewhat bearable for each other. I decided to ask her out one night that summer. I mean, what harm could it possibly do? We got along well enough, and I could tell that she liked me as much as I liked her. I walked up to her that day, with 2 tickets to the newest Marvel movie at the time hidden behind my back. Ashley?
What's up?
Got any plans after this?
After what? My shift? I don't think so. I'll probably just head home. Lord knows I could do with some rest. My back is killing me. Why do you ask?
I was actually thinking, I was wondering if you'd like to go to the movies with me. What the?
Who could that be? Wait a second. That's the truck I told you about. The one that's been parked across the street for the past week.
Ashley told me she had first noticed the beat-up truck parked across the road from the store sometime in the previous week. She had noticed it every day since then. The driver never once got out of the car. He just sat in there for hours on end, watching, waiting. According to her, he usually arrived just after her shift started and drove off just before she got off work. It was certainly creepy, but she had never really thought much of it until now.
I've got to take this, Jack. We'll talk later, yeah?
Yeah, sure thing.
Good evening, sir. Can I take your order? Hello?
I'll have a...
Are you alright, sir? Do you need some help? Do you need water? I'm going outside. I've got to try and help him.
Ashley, look, we don't know who this guy is. I don't think it's the best idea to go out there, especially not this late.
Just watch the store, okay?
Ashley, wait! I called after her, but she was out of the door before I knew it. Looking back now, I should have done something. I should have locked the door. I should have held her back. But I just stood there, frozen. Nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. My legs were stuck in place. I tried to scream, but my voice was stuck in my throat. I pulled myself together and dialed 911 on the landline. Before they even picked up, I ran outside after Ashley as fast as my legs could carry me. But by the time I got to the truck, the driver had picked her up and dumped her in the back seat. He was a big man, thin but big-boned, with sickly yellow eyes and red sores all over his ugly face. Hey! Stop right there, or I've called the cops. They're going to be here any minute, you hear me? So put her down before you make things worse for yourself. The man's laugh sent a chill down my spine. It was cold and unearthly, and even though I had no proof, I knew at that moment that it was the laugh of a killer.
And what is it that you're gonna do exactly with those scrawny arms and that pathetic stance? Huh? Run along, boy, like the good little dog you are. You son of a...
He stepped up to me and hit me once with his fist, cracking my nose and loosening a couple of my teeth. I collapsed to the ground immediately. The last thing I remember seeing were the taillights of his beat-up truck as he drove away with my friend in the back seat. When I came to, there were cops on the scene. I found myself in a paramedic truck. A cop came over to question me about the incident. I told him everything I knew, and he promised me that they'd have Ashley home in no time. It's been a year since that night. I quit my job. The tickets I got still sit on my desk collecting dust. I can't go to the movies anymore. A few months ago, I got word that they were able to track the truck of the guy who took Ashley. The police department got an anonymous tip that a similar vehicle to the one from the security footage was parked by an abandoned cabin somewhere deep in the woods. When they went in, though, the cabin was empty. The only thing they ever found were Ashley's silver watch and a clean white wedding gown draped over a mannequin. I had been working night shifts at a McDonald's restaurant with my best friend Rachel for about 3 months. We needed the extra cash for rent and also for school stuff. In that short period, I had unfortunately attended to a lot of creepy and weird individuals, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened that very night. It felt like another slow night. It was almost 9:30 p.m. and we had barely gotten any customers. Rachel and I were thinking of closing early because she had a date and I didn't mind catching some extra hours of sleep. Suddenly, the doors swung open. A mysterious-looking man walked in. He was wearing a top hat and sunglasses. I mean, who wears shades at night? He also had a dreary-looking trench coat on. It was a bit unsettling and just out of style. He slowly glanced around the room for a few seconds before walking to a table. Rachel had an abrupt bathroom emergency, so it meant I had to go take his order. I took a deep breath, grabbed the order menu, and wore a fake smile. After I was ready, I walked to his table. He was on his phone.
Good evening, sir. Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order, please?
I said. It was almost like he didn't hear me, but after a few seconds, he spoke.
I'll have 2 large burgers, extra fries, and a Diet Coke.
His voice was deep, and I'm pretty sure there was a bit of a southern accent in there. While writing the order, I could feel the heat of his gaze on me. He had taken off his sunshades. It was common for men to stare and probably ask for your number later, but when I lifted my head, I realized he wasn't staring at my face or anywhere else. He was staring at my hands. There was a creepy look in his eyes and an almost demented smile on his face. He looked mesmerized. I knew there was nothing special about my hands. I didn't even have nail polish on. I cleared my throat audibly.
Will that be all, sir?
I asked.
Not at all.
He briskly responded.
I say you have very beautiful hands. Do you mind if I touch them?
He asked. I would have never touched him with a 10-foot pole, but then I thought maybe he was some hand modeling agent. Plus, I was also hoping not to make things weird so I could get a good tip.
Okay.
I stretched my hands out. He took off his leather hand glove, reached for my hand, and began to caress it softly. His hands felt rough and edgy, like he had been plowing a farm all day. Things quickly became awkward and almost sexual. I retracted my hands and feigned a stifled chuckle.
Okay, sir. I should go get your order now.
I quickly walked away. It was a very nerve-wracking experience, and it probably was the first red flag. Luckily for me, after I was done with the order, Rachel was back from her emergency. I asked her to help me take it to the table, but I didn't mention anything else to her. She casually walked to the table and delivered the order. They exchanged a few words, and then she walked back.
What did he say?
I abruptly asked.
Oh, nothing. I think he was trying to hit on me. He asked what time we were getting off, and he gave off some pretty cringy vibes. Definitely not my type.
Rachel responded, then walked back into the kitchen. I pondered on her words a bit, then ultimately just concluded I was overthinking it. Big mistake. A few minutes later, he just stood up and left. He had barely even touched his meal, and he paid in full and left a huge tip on the table. Rachel and I decided it was also time to close up. It was about 10:15 p.m. We packed it in and turned off the lights. It was already dark out, but our apartment was like 3 blocks away. I waited with her till her boyfriend came to pick her up. We said our goodbyes, and then they drove off. They were going in the opposite direction, so I didn't ask for a lift. I began my short stride home. The walkway was pretty lonely. Aside from the few street lights that weren't flickering on and off, it would have been pitch black darkness. I would usually walk home with Rachel, but on nights like that, I had to fly solo. After a while, I began to hear stumping footsteps behind me. I looked over my shoulder. The person was shrouded in darkness, and he was too far behind. I continued walking. Seconds later, I noticed that his pace had hastened. He was gaining on me. My heart began to race. My first thought was that he was probably a mugger. With jittery hands, I slipped out pepper spray from my bag and concealed it. I never leave home without it. I could feel he was right behind me. My heart was about to leap out of my mouth. In a moment of courage, I swung around so I could spray him. But to my shock, there was nobody there. I felt my mind was just playing tricks on me again. I caught a sigh of relief and tucked in my pepper spray, but as I was about to turn around, a large man pounced on me and pushed me to the ground. It happened so quickly. It was the same man from the restaurant. He pinned my left hand to the ground with one hand while I struggled, and then he pulled out a knife from his trench coat. I was scared to death. It looked like he wanted to cut off my hand, but before he could go through with it, I managed to slip out my pepper spray. I fired straight into his eyes. While he was wiping his eyes vigorously, I drove my knee into his gonads hard, and he fell off me. I scrambled to my feet and frantically sprinted home while screaming at the top of my voice. I bolted my doors and immediately dialed 911. The entire ordeal had me shaken up for days. It took the police about 2 weeks to find the man. They traced him to his suburban home where he lived alone, but that wasn't all. Upon forced entry, the police uncovered a concealed basement, and within the basement, they found disturbing and gut-wrenching sight of severed hands hanging all over the walls. The man was put on death row. The police are still trying to find the owners of the severed hands, if they're still alive, that is.
I'm just glad mine didn't end up on some sick freak's wall as a trophy.
Last winter, I started working part-time at a Popeyes near the highway. Things weren't too bad until they moved me to the night shift about a month into my time at the restaurant. The restaurant was busy during the day but got downright freaky at night. I didn't enjoy going to work much on winter nights, but I managed to push through it because the pay kept going up. Then, one night in January, I made a terrible mistake. I offered to close the Popeyes on my own after the night shift. Lizzie was supposed to help me. She's a blonde, sweet girl who started around the same time I did, but she was feeling ill, so I offered to handle closing solo. Once the last customers were gone, I began my closing process. I locked the doors, I turned off the main lights, then pulled out a Bluetooth speaker, placed it on the table in the dining room, and started to mop up while jamming to some classic rock. I wiped down all of the surfaces. I worked fast. We had an official policy to only ever close with 2 or more staff on site. The official reason was for safety and accountability, but as the minutes ticked by that night, I began to feel like someone was moving around the restaurant just out of my sight. I was about to start cleaning the bathrooms when I heard a commotion from the kitchen.
Lizzie?
I called out, holding up my mop for self-defense, I guess. There was a scraping sound followed by silence. I hopped over the counter, still holding onto the mop like it was a club. Something had knocked over a packet of flour lying on the kitchen counter. White flour spilled all over the floor.
Boo!
I yelped, turning back, and saw a man standing inside the restaurant. I just about jumped out of my skin. The man looked like a creepier version of Popeye. Dirt clung heavily to his clothes, and the pipe he was smoking on spread a foul smell all over the restaurant.
I'm imagining this.
I said out loud, clutching the mop so hard. The man took a step forward and stopped.
Hey, are you here alone?
I froze.
Lizzie!
I asked again, forgetting she had gone home a long time ago.
Nope, sorry, not Lizzie.
Who are you?
I asked. He took another step forward and smiled.
I was many things. Now, did you say you were alone, or did I imagine that?
My mouth was dry. I was having a hard time speaking. Now he was standing in the middle of the restaurant, partially hunched over. His chin made his face look absurd, and he only had one eye open, but it was enough to give me a death stare.
Do you know I only eat spinach?
What?
I took 2 steps back. He remained where he stood.
I don't understand why they put this on me. I'm a vegan. I don't even like chicken. You meat eaters are cruel. It feels fun to silence a helpless bird, right?
What are you talking about? Look, we're closed for the day. If you have any issues, come back tomorrow when the manager's here.
Oh no! I don't think the manager will agree so easily. I need to leave him a message.
His words made absolutely no sense, but the more I heard him, the more I felt my skin crawl.
What message? Dude, I'm telling you, you better leave or I'll—
You got a face I would like to touch.
Suddenly, he started running towards me at full speed. I screamed and started running too.
Maybe if I do what your manager does to those poor chickens, the world would realize. Maybe I should just give them a taste of their own medicine.
Go away! Help! Help!
I got inside the restroom and locked the door before he could get in. His chilling threats continued from the other side of the door.
Open up! Open up! It's Popeye the Sailor Man!
My body was drenched in a cold sweat. I was panting in fear. What should I do? How do I get out of this alive? My phone wasn't with me and this place was in the middle of the highway. Very limited chances that someone would hear my screams.
I'm strong to the finish, 'cause I eat my spinach. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Oh, oh.
His voice started to change, and soon he was kicking the door hard.
Don't try my patience, lady. The more you make me wait, the more damage I'll do to you. Open the darn door!
Please
Please, just go away. Leave me alone.
But he didn't. Soon the door started to give in. His kicks were so strong. I knew I wouldn't be safe for long and it was time to get out and run. I climbed up the bathroom vent and with great difficulty squeezed myself through it. I was already halfway from getting out through that small space when I heard the door break.
So the little birdie tries to run.
I began to move my body quickly. I was almost out when he grabbed my feet. His ironclad grasp gave me bruises. But thank God, I wore my heels that day. I poked his big eye with my other stiletto.
Ah! My eye! My eye!
And he let go of me. As soon as I made it onto the ground, I took my shoes off and started running towards my scooter parked in the driveway. Luckily, I always kept my keys in my jean pocket. It took me about 5 to 7 seconds to start the engine, but it felt like hours in panic. When I was driving away at full speed, I saw the man coming out of the restaurant. He chased me, but I drove too fast. That was the last time I stepped foot in Popeyes. I quit the next morning, calling my manager to make sure that she knew it was my fault the place wasn't properly closed. I didn't want to get Lizzie in trouble, though I did beg her to find somewhere else to work. She promised she'd think about it. I don't leave my apartment much these days. I'm able to work from home and I get all of my food delivered. The rare times I step outside for a walk, well, I walk fast. Maybe it's my imagination, but sometimes I feel like something is out there looking for me just out of sight. When I sleep, which is rare these days, I dream of that crazy Popeye man who called himself a true vegan and came to set an example for the non-vegetarian people by doing God knows what to me.
I grew up in a foster home after my parents passed away at a young age. I suffered from anxiety since then, and needless to say, foster care doubled it up. When I was 9 years old, I was sent to a new foster home. The house was in a sketchy neighborhood, and it was run by a woman named Zelda. She was pretty mean and made us kids do all the chores. Apart from me, she had 3 more kids who were also boys. We lived opposite of a bizarre middle-aged man who always behaved weirdly in the presence of children. He wore trousers with suspenders and no shirts on, ever. We all shared one bathroom with 2 bunk beds, and whenever we slid open the curtain, we always saw him sitting on his balcony holding binoculars over his eyes. He would watch over us all the time, making it excessively creepy. Now, Zelda worked a day job, but even then she couldn't make ends meet. This made her try out new ways to earn extra cash now and then. Zelda never cared about risks. All she cared about was the money. One day, waking up, I heard Zelda talking to someone. I was on breakfast duty when I heard an extra pair of footsteps inside the house. Whoever Zelda was talking to had now entered our house. Out of curiosity, I peeked in and saw it was sketchy Lenny. Surprisingly, he was dressed nicely today, but his scary face remained the same. Zelda sat him down on the couch and called out to us.
Boys, there's someone here to meet you. Come out!
We all lined up following her call. Lenny's face lightened up with a disturbing joy the moment he saw us. It was the first time we were all meeting him face to face. Lenny not only looked even worse close up, but also had this uncomfortable habit of licking his lips after every sentence.
So, this is Lenny. He's going to be your new friend, and he's going to spend some time with you guys from now on.
Zelda, what about breakfast? Yeah, we could use some food before all this bullcrap early in the morning.
Mind your tongue, Thomas!
Thomas was the most vocal one among us, but the moment Zelda scolded him, Lenny cut her off, saying,
What a gentleman. I like him already.
Lenny got up from the couch and brought his face real close to Thomas. His eyes widened as he looked right into Thomas's eyes and said, It'll be fun. He quickly took out a $20 bill and, tossing it to Zelda, grabbed Thomas's hand and started pulling him into the basement.
What? What's happening? Where are you taking me? Zelda! Stop! Leave me alone, you freak!
Lenny continued to drag him and Zelda didn't even try to stop him. We three watched in complete horror, having no clue what was happening. We heard the basement door lock, and then everything went silent. 15 minutes later, Thomas came out, and to our shock, he was fine. There was nothing wrong with his physical appearance, but his face looked traumatized. Lenny left, and I knew that this was just the beginning. That night, when we asked Thomas if Lenny did something inappropriate, Thomas said, "Well, he didn't put his hands on me if that's what you're all asking." "Then what happened? Don't lie to us, you look super pale, dude." Thomas said that after Lenny made him sit on the mattress, he asked him to take off his shoes, revealing his bare feet. After that, Lenny went on taking several snaps of Thomas's feet on his smartphone, and then left. "He took pictures of your feet? What a sick psycho!" 2 days later, Lenny arrived once again. This time, he had 4 cheese corn dogs in his hands. Again, he tossed a $20 bill to Zelda and made us all stand in line. One by one, he handed us the corn dogs and asked us to eat them. "Enjoy 'em, kids. Uncle Lenny loves corn dogs too." As awkward and uncomfortable as it was, we had no other choice than to follow his instructions. While we 4 boys ate corn dogs, Lenny watched us like a hawk. He licked his lips 1,000 times and smirked in between. When he left, I took a long shower to wash off his eyes from me. That night, I talked to Zelda. "When is Lenny gonna stop coming here?"
Well, this isn't your house, so you don't get to decide. Now go to your room. Feel lucky that he only pays to watch you guys.
We couldn't go to the cops because there was no physical injury to report, and if we went away, we knew Zelda would make our lives a living hell once the cops left. So, we tolerated the freak for a few more months. One day, I was cutting the grass in the backyard when I saw Lenny talking to a little boy down the sidewalk. The boy was younger than me and looked lost. Lenny's predatory smile didn't escape my eyes. Within the next 2 seconds, Lenny was holding the kid's hand and taking him into his apartment. I was pretty sure what had happened. He tricked the naive child, claiming to offer him help, but I knew what his true intentions were. This seemed like the perfect opportunity to me. I rushed inside the house and told my other brothers. Thank God Zelda was out grocery shopping. We immediately called 911 and told them about Lenny and this little kid. In the next 5 minutes, cop cars flooded the street outside. It turned out that the little kid was the grandkid of the retired town mayor, and he had been separated from his parents on his way to the park. Somehow, he ended up near our house and thus bumped into Lenny. When the cops knocked on Lenny's door and asked him about the child, the freak straight away denied seeing any kid. Their suspicion only grew stronger and they barged into his house. The little kid was lying on the couch with his socks and shoes removed and the first few buttons of his shirt opened. The kid said Lenny was helping him to be comfortable until his parents arrived. I hope no one ever tells him what the freak really had in mind for him. Long story short, Lenny was arrested, and because the kid was the son of a powerful family, sketchy Lenny is still rotting in jail. Having parents and family is the biggest strength in the world, and who can vouch for it better than a foster kid?
My name is Dina, and I'm a huge horror fan. Well, at least I used to be. To be honest, all my love for the genre disappeared in one night. You see, that night, I was alone in my house. I had just moved in and still had a lot of unpacked boxes. It was a Saturday night and I thought I would spend the evening watching a horror movie. But before I could choose one, I got a call.
Hello, Dina. Do you like horror movies?
Dude, really?
What's wrong, my friend?
First of all, you're not intimidating at all. Second, do you really want to scare me by imitating Scream? There are literal parodies of that movie.
You should have more respect for someone who knows where you live, Dina.
Mr. Psycho, I regret to inform you that we are now in the 21st century. I would be disappointed if you didn't even know my birthday. I'm gonna keep looking for a movie. You're better off trying to scare a boomer. Bye-bye.
Once I cut him off, I laughed a little under my breath. I've gotta admit it didn't scare me, but it did entertain me. What I didn't know was that my fun was about to end. Suddenly, a stone smashed against my glass. I ran to the window, but there was no one there. And as I approached the stone, it had a message on it.
Hello? Listen to me. You better.
No! You listen to me. You cut me off again, and I'll break you in half. Understand?
What do you want?
You said you knew Scream, didn't you? You know what I want. Fame.
Well, you're looking for it with the wrong person. Get out of here. I'll call the police.
Do you think I'll give you time to do that?
Where are you?
Watching you, Dina. Watching you walk nervously in that blue t-shirt.
Hearing this, my first instinct was to run as far as I could. I headed towards my room, but the man's voice stopped me.
Are you sure about that? He might be there.
Suddenly, I stopped. Was he telling me not to go? Or maybe he's telling the truth and he's really there. I decided to ignore my room and go upstairs. I went into the guest room and hid. The place was full of boxes. Darkness surrounded the whole area and it was impossible to see anyone.
What a curious place you chose to hide, Dina.
I know you're not here. You don't know where I am.
You think you're clever, but you hid in the most predictable place possible, dear friend.
Oh yeah? If you were in this room, then how did you know how I was dressed?
Don't you remember the movie, Dina? It's never just one killer.
The man was in front of me, brandishing a huge knife in his hand. The design was similar to Scream, but this one was scarier. The man approached me slowly. His steps were terrifying. This man knew he had this situation under control and I was nothing more than prey. I threw a box at him to stop him and ran for the door. Instead of running, I waited behind the door and when he came out, I hit him with it. I ran towards the exit, but before I got there, the door opened. Behind it, there was another man with a different mask, but similar to that of his companion. I turned around and saw that the other man was coming down the stairs. I was locked in, and my only way out was the basement. I ran and hid under the stairs while one of them came down. The man began to walk slowly, inspecting every part of the basement slowly. He knew I was here, but he couldn't find me. I thought about trying to hit him to defend myself, but because of our physical difference, I knew that would not end well. But once the man got to where I was, he stopped and turned around. The stalker started looking for the basement lights. This was my chance to escape. I pushed him and climbed the stairs, locking him in as soon as I could get up. But that wasn't the end of it.
Good job, Dina.
As soon as I turned around, the other man lunged at me and tried to hit me. I managed to dodge him and started to run, but he was faster than me. He grabbed me by the hair and threw me against the counter, hurting me with the kitchen stuff.
I have to tell you the truth, Dina. My friend is not the smartest of the bunch. I'll deal with him later. What's a great movie without a betrayal, right?
It's just a movie! What makes you think it'll all work out the same way?
Of course it will, and unlike a movie, it doesn't have to end. I'll be famous. I'll get letters. People will recognize me. I'll be bigger than Manson.
I wasn't going to let this psycho hurt me. During his speech, I reached out my hand to see what I could grab to defend myself, and as luck would have it, I found something perfect.
You wish!
He may have had a mask, but he still had an opening for me to see through. I poured oil spray through this opening, and as I expected, the man went berserk, swinging his knife sporadically, unable to hit anyone. I rammed him as hard as I could, and while he was on the floor, I ran for the exit. On the way, the basement door gave way and the other man started chasing me from behind. But this chase didn't last long. A police cruiser was outside my house. As soon as they saw the man chasing me, the officers stopped them. I was finally safe. I warned them that the other criminal was inside the house, but they couldn't find him. He had escaped through the back door, but he didn't get far, as his partner ratted him out. Both of these guys were old neighbors, and they really had intended to murder me. They were both convicted of attempted murder, and by the time they got out, I'll be prepared if I have to deal with them again. That was the last day I watched a horror movie. I admit that I've tried to watch them, but I find it impossible. Every time I do, I remember those two psychopaths trying to kill me. They may not have made it big, but for what they did to me that night, I will remember them forever. If you ever notice your boss acting strange, don't ignore it. Don't pretend that you're okay with it and it'll go away. I'm saying this because I thought I could ignore my boss, and what happened was bad enough that I'm in therapy for it. It happened a week ago. I'm a pizza delivery driver, and every night is the same. I clock in and make a few deliveries throughout the night. Then towards the end of my shift, my boss makes strange comments to me. Usually, I just ignore him, but this one night he was especially pushy.
Hey, you look beautiful tonight. Why don't you come to my house after your shift and we can get a few drinks?
Thanks, but I'm busy.
I'm just joking with you, Gloria. Lighten up.
I laughed, but I could see his stare following me as I pulled out my phone to clock out. Right before I hit the button, however, the phone rang. The manager walked over to it, picked it up, and answered.
Hey, we got a late order. Gloria, why don't you take it?
I sighed and reluctantly agreed. The address was a little ways away in a well-to-do neighborhood, but I had no idea what kind of horror awaited me there. I knocked on the door and a woman answered.
Oh, the pizza is already here. I'm so sorry. Come in while I get my wallet. Yeah, okay.
I stepped inside and immediately noticed something strange. There were photos of me up on the walls. Every wall was covered with pictures. I recoiled, realizing that these photos were taken from the CCTV footage from the surveillance cameras my manager had installed a while back.
What the?
Before I could finish my sentence, however, I heard footsteps and whirled around toward the door. There stood my manager. You can't possibly understand the horrifying picture he painted as he stood there. My car's headlights casting a shadow on his disfigured body. His hands hung at his sides, much larger than the rest of his lanky arms. His round eyes stared at me wildly, and a grin spread over his face. I could barely stop screaming, but I still felt hopeful. Maybe he had come to rescue me.
What are you doing here?
You always protect me, and now I can have you. You think that you could just ignore me and get away with it?
I glanced past him and saw that his wife was standing just behind him, her eyes fixed on the ceiling as she muttered over and over.
He'll have you. He'll always have you. He'll have you. He'll always have you.
Her face showed no emotion, as if she were not aware of what was going on. I screamed and ran into the next room, but he came after me, screaming and shouting. I could hear his heavy footsteps thudding behind me, his huge hands reaching for me. I managed to dodge into another room, but as I ran, I saw his wife advance from another doorway.
What is wrong with you? Don't you care that your husband is trying to hurt me?
Still staring at the ceiling, she simply grinned wider and raised a rolling pin in the air. I realized then that they were both psychos, and I had to escape. I made a run for the window and managed to jump out just as they reached me, closing the window behind me. My car was only a few feet away and I made it into it with barely enough time to lock the doors behind me. The manager and his wife came running out. The manager held nothing in his hands, but the rage on his face was evident. He gnashed his small teeth as he saw where he was, turning toward his wife and telling her something. I couldn't hear, but the next moment he turned and began to run toward me, his wife following just behind him. I put the car in reverse and peeled out of the driveway, not looking back until I was a few blocks away. I reported them to the police that night and they were arrested. As it turns out, he was responsible for some of the missing girls in town over the past few months. Never ignore your boss. Never ignore them. What makes this whole ordeal worse, however, is that some of the pictures on his walls weren't from the CCTV footage. Some of them were of me when I was sleeping, when I was driving, or even when I was alone in my own home. I can only conclude that my boss had been stalking me and planning this attack for months. It still sends a chill down my spine when I think about it. But the worst thing is the realization of how close I could have come to the same fate as those other unfortunate girls. Don't ignore your boss if they act strange. Don't assume that it'll blow over and that everything will be okay. Reach out to someone you trust and make sure that they know what's going on. Your safety is more important than anything else. I can safely say that I'm never going to deliver pizza again.
When I finally got off work, it was midnight. I highly doubted any restaurant would be open now. My stomach made a rumbling sound signifying it was dying of hunger. God, I need to eat. I hurried down the office elevator, finding myself on the lonely, dark streets. My house wasn't far away, but no man can sleep on an empty stomach. That's when I had an idea. There's a convenience store at the gas station nearby. I can get some instant noodles and maybe a couple of beers to call it a night. Also, it was the weekend, and what can be more exciting than welcoming it with a couple of drinks? I went through with my plan and stopped by the gas station. The owner was dozing on the counter. There was a strong smell that wafted out of his mouth every time he let out a snoring breath. I picked up some ramen noodles and a few cans of beer. Then I walked to the counter and woke him up. With his drowsy eyes, the man rung up everything. I was going to pay him when I noticed a wooden box kept on the other side of the counter. It was filled with red tomatoes. Generally, the convenience store sold ready-to-eat stuff, so seeing something fresh was a little surprising. Hey man, are those tomatoes?
Yes, from my garden, but I don't sell them at night.
His answer felt odd to me. I didn't know someone needed to set a time slot to sell tomatoes. How much for a dozen?
I told you, I don't sell them at night!
Whoa, what the hell, dude? Why not? It's just a bunch of vegetables.
Ah!
He was refusing to sell them, and I was adamant about buying them anyway. Actually, after a point, it became a matter of silly ego. When the man still refused, I took out a $100 bill and dangled it in the air. Can I have 12 of these now? Snatching the bill from my hand, he gave me 12 red fresh tomatoes in a transparent polyethylene bag. I left with a proud smile on my face, which only took 5 seconds to fade away. And this is where things went wrong. I was walking along on the sidewalk and there were no cars on the streets. That's when I heard something behind me. I looked back but saw nothing but the empty highway behind me. I'd already wandered far from the gas station. It was as I was walking in the dark spot between streetlights that I felt alone, out in the middle of the night. I increased my speed, and just then I noticed a man standing in my way. There was quite some distance between us, but I could see him. He had a blank face and was staring at me. Then his eyes shifted down to my hand, and a sick smile appeared on his face. Jeez, what a weirdo. I began walking as I muttered to myself. The man didn't move. He just stood there watching me coming towards him. The more I walked closer to him, the more a tense feeling gripped my throat. What if he tried to do something? We were inches apart when I changed my lane to walk past him, and he surprisingly moved aside as well again, blocking my way. What the? I moved to my left, and so did he. What's your problem, dude? He pointed at my bag of tomatoes and asked for one. Realizing he wouldn't move unless I gave him one, I heaved in disappointment. Maybe he's just some hungry homeless guy. I gave him one red tomato. He took it from my hand with his long, bony fingers and moved away. I started walking, but kept turning back to see what he was up to now. As soon as he got the tomato in his grasp, he chomped a big bite out of it. The tomato was so juicy that the red juice leaked from the corners of his mouth, dripping on his clothes. The way he ate tomatoes made me cringe. I turned away and took the last turn to my house. Thinking the world is filled with creeps, I blame my own unlucky fate for coming across the man. I was close to my house when I noticed something on my right. It was him again, standing under a lamppost. His face was smeared with the juices of the tomato he had already gobbled up, but now there was a smile. What the frack? How did he get here? With slow, trembling steps, I walked towards him. He just stood there, watching me with an evil smile. Suddenly, he jumped and blocked my way. What the hell do you want? Go away, or I'll make you, freak! He was again asking for a tomato. That's when it hit me. Could he be the reason why the store owner refused to sell the tomatoes in the first place? Did it even make sense? Drops of sweat appeared on my forehead. I grabbed another tomato and threw it at him. He didn't try to catch it, and the tomato smashed on the ground. His wide, scary eyes looked down at the ruined tomato, and then looked back at me. I took a step to my right, and he lunged in the same direction, blocking my way. Are you crazy? All this fuss for a damn vegetable? His gaze turned furious, and he gave me a smoldering death stare like he was about to snap. I grabbed my house keys tightly in my other hand. I could see my house flashing like a beacon of safety on the other side of my life and death situation. He suddenly started walking towards me. I wanted to move, but my legs froze. My breathing got heavier. He kept walking and then suddenly picked up speed. Now he was frantically running at me. I threw the bag of tomatoes at him and ran for my life. I only stopped when I got home. As soon as I got in, I slammed the door behind me. Not once had I looked back during that time. I checked if all the windows were locked and then cowered under the covers for the entire night. I even forgot to eat. The next morning, when I got up, I found that someone had left a note on my porch. The note read, "Did you know a tomato is a fruit? I bet you didn't."
Hi, I'm Derek. I was really excited to move to New Jersey. I recently got a new job there, but my wife and son were not so excited. But they had agreed for my sake. We had seen this beautiful house in Westfield. It was nice and cozy, but on the very first night while we were unpacking, we got a call on the landline. We were all surprised that someone had called that number when we had not given it out to anyone yet. I picked up the call. The voice on the other side was deep.
Hello, Derek. Welcome to my home.
The call got cut. My wife asked me who it was. I told her about the call and she was shocked that the caller knew my name and claimed this to be his home. We were worried and couldn't sleep. In the middle of the night, I got up to drink some water and came to the kitchen and was looking for a bottle. I opened the fridge and was shocked to see a piece of cake inside with, "To Derek and his family. Happy staying." I jumped in fear and hit my back on the counter. I hurt my back. My wife came running down to check and saw me lying on the floor. I was in so much pain. Just then, the phone rang again. This time my wife picked it up and put it on speaker. It was the same voice again.
Hey, sorry if I scared you. It was just cake, Derek. I'm sorry about your back. Hope you're okay.
This was even more terrifying. He was watching us and knew what was happening in our home. My wife immediately called 911 and told them what was happening. They sent a couple of cops to the house. They took the landline number and said that they'll initiate a trace, and just left. We could not sleep and were wondering what would happen the next day. My wife was already thinking of finding another place to move to.
Tomorrow, I'm calling the realtor. We are not staying in a creepy place like this.
Calm down, honey. The cops are on it. The house is not the issue. It's some psycho who's the problem.
My wife was not completely convinced by this, but since she couldn't do anything in the middle of the night, she went back to sleep. Later in the night, my back pain intensified and I had to go to the emergency room. But we didn't want to leave the kids home alone, so I decided to take a cab. The cab arrived surprisingly faster than I expected. I got in. The cab driver saw me in pain and was very helpful. He even offered to drop me off back at home. I went to the emergency room where they gave me a few painkillers and told me to rest for a week. I sat in the cab and dozed off because of the painkillers. And when I woke up, I was at the doorstep of my place. My wife woke me up. I was surprised to have ended up there. She helped me stand and get into the house. She was about to close the door when the phone rang again. My wife did not want to pick up the call. It continued to ring and stopped. Then it started again. This time I picked it up and the voice was very angry.
Derek, I was nice this time and dropped you home. If you try to contact the cops, I won't be so nice.
The call got cut. He was the cab driver. I felt so angry that he was so close and I didn't know. I slept feeling frustrated. For the next couple of days, there was no phone call from the creepy guy. The cops were still looking for the caller and were unable to trace him. I was at home resting because of the back pain. My wife had called the realtor and was trying to find another house, but no good options were coming our way. My wife was getting frustrated. It was the 4th night of our stay. We were having dinner when my son, Sam, suddenly asked,
Dad, my friend Keith told me that this house is haunted. Is that true?
I almost choked on my food when I heard that. This was news to me. My wife was also shocked to hear this. I told my son that there is no such thing as haunted houses and asked him to finish his food and go to bed. After tucking him in his bed, my wife came and was about to ask me something when the phone rang again. Since the cops were tracing the call, they had asked us not to stop talking to the caller, and so we had picked up the call so that the cops could trace him. When I picked it up, the caller was laughing.
Derek, tell your son that his friend was right. The walls of the house hide a lot of secrets.
I begged him to leave us alone, but he told me he couldn't because I was part of the family from the time I started living at the house. My wife was frustrated. She took the phone and yelled at him.
Who the hell are you? And what do you want?
He just laughed and cut the call. Later that night, when I was switching off the lights and going to the bedroom, I suddenly felt a shadow behind me. I turned to look and there was no one there. I thought I was seeing things because of what the caller told me. I was about to enter the room when I heard a knock from Sam's room. I rushed to his room and when I opened it, Sam was sleeping peacefully. I heaved a sigh of relief and went back to the room and slept. The next day, our realtor called and we told her what was happening and threatened to sue her if she didn't find us another house. She apologized and told us about another place closer to the city. We took the help of the cops and moved to the other place, never to come back to this strange house. Sometime later, I heard in the news about the cops catching a guy called Arthur, who was threatening and stalking people who took that house. The guy was deranged and psychotic. When they caught him, he confessed to have killed people and hid their bodies in the walls of the house.